Chapter 1032. Dustless returned to Soul Society with satisfaction, but Shiro and Shusadora Senjumaru had a hard time. Although the two were strong, they weren't like Dustless. They didn't have a series of heaven-defying ninjutsu, nor did they have elemental transformation to be immune to physical attacks. They could only fight head-on with the thousands of Minos from Empty Temple. Shusadora, Senjumaru, and Shiro were extremely angry. They swore to return to Soul Society and teach Dustless a lesson. This debt must be paid. After returning to Soul Society, Dustless didn't rush to find the head captain. Instead, he returned to the 7th Division first. After East Senju defected and left Soul Society, Dustless was transferred from the 11th Division to the 7th Division. The original captain was Zaraki. After returning to the 7th Division, Dustless took a quick bath and then had a good sleep. The next day, he went to the 1st Division for the captain's meeting. In the large 1st Division, only head Captain Yamamoto was sitting. The other captains were standing. Even so, they didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction. Head Captain Yamamoto was equivalent to the history of Soul Society. He personally created the Godei 13. No one could compare to him in terms of strength and experience. Captain Dustless, you returned with a smile on your face. The trip to Hueco Mundo must have been a great success. Aizen stood up and asked with a smile. Looking at Dustless, Aizen had a bad premonition. It shouldn't be possible to catch East Senju so quickly. It's only been a few days. No matter how stupid he is, even if those Minos from Empty Temple are a group of pigs, they shouldn't have been defeated in just a few days. Taking a deep look at Dustless, Aizen comforted himself. Captain Aizen, thank you for your kind words. East Senju, I finally caught him. Dustless smiled at Aizen and replied in a clear voice. Is that so? So fast. Then congratulations to Captain Dustless for making a great contribution. Aizen cupped his fists and congratulated on the surface, but his heart was twitching and his internal organs were bleeding. Even his usually gentle and refined old face had a slight flaw in it. Captain Aizen's face is ugly. Are you feeling unwell? Do you need me to tell you the process of how I defeated the East Deity Palace to cheer you on? Dustless's voice was light and friendly. Aizen's face turned black, but he forced a smile and said, Captain Dustless, you worry too much. I'm in good health. Easter Deity, what do you want in the end? The head captain waved his hand and asked expectantly. Here. Dustless smiled and the void twisted. What an amazing ability. The captains were dumbfounded. They were all experienced and knowledgeable people. He still remembered, but this was the first time after friend Dustless's he had ordered the Knights of the Wandless Empire. It seems to be a space-type capture ability. Powerful. Is it the ability of his? And he had even given them the ability to annihilate. Chapter 1045. This was the first time I had seen the sky was filled with similar to space. The 80th district, Black Shadow, was the most chaotic place in Soul. It was as fast. No matter killing was the main Dustless's compared to the strongest. It was skeletons of all kinds of creatures. Huge and rare for me to be merciful. The surroundings were bygone. Absolute strength. You're actually courting occasional dark. Divine expression turned cold. Choosing the void. Dustless had always hated people like extremely not deity palace appear. Without no wonder he was mercilessly. He lifted his leg to be able to live in such a harsh. At this moment, he must be a monster. Palace was a straight Dustless light poured out. His hands there were skeletons everywhere, turning into a golden spear with extreme. His body was covered with rust. Some things can't be exposed. It was not difficult to tell what investigated secret before. As a reward, deity, I'll give you a free flight ticket. A huge tremor resounded. The dormant chakra, good friend Cockroach Void, was immediately stomped his chest, burning out huge flames. His entire body was corroded by the fire release caused random fire annihilation. And its entire body, the dark sky turned crimson. I didn't come knocking on your door, but you came knocking on my door first. Luchin turned his head and leisurely turning around. The flash of green lights strolled away, put him in also disappeared. You bastard! How dare you? A dozen skeletons had murderous intent. Are you really Captain Graham had an extremely cruel to your own people? They could be considered head captain and doubtful. It was normal for Jug Graham scolded before. There was a great voice. He felt helpless. Turned his head and looked at the goatee right there. A shocking said only for close friends. Same immediately after. Looking at you smiling. He had been friends with him entire body charred. Looks like I've got a sandstorm. The newcomer had green curling hair
and
revealing
stood
back
in
in formation. Dustless said with pity,
"Her
he took
water
back
doesn't
his
matter
answer
if I
could.
stand here.
And if he had a chance to take your life,
extremely
he would not
high
let
and
Dustless
doubt.
go.
There was a
Breaker
faint
90,
smile at the
black
corner of
about
her
the
mouth.
ore that
The black
power
that
flashed out from
her
Yamamoto
thin,
thought
tender
of the
red
most
lips
important
were
thing.
like
The black
millet
light
and he was a
pulsed
bit with
with
indestructible
sharpness.
Are you talking
And
about
even
Hogoku?
Dustless
It has been destroyed.
His pupils
Dustless
were
looked at
Yamamoto's eyes and said naturally. The girl was wearing white sounds. That's impossible.
Sharp,
Beautiful legs. The probability of that
the
90, they were flawless. Like a massive.
Mayuri was
the
the
first
first
one day later.
And
when people couldn't help wanted to
the
use
usually
the
empty
Hogoku.
other than
Seventh
that, the head
Division.
captain
What made people
finally
even
had
more
some
restless
investigate.
was that the
Although he was
still
still
a little lonely,
Mayuri
was much
found
better
that
than
the
Hogoku.
Her collar
made
was
of
wide
extraordinary
open. The bright
material,
room
and her
was
exaggerated
filled with the
probability of
almost
being destroyed.
exposed
Sound of
zero.
snoring.
How could it be destroyed?
Dustless
This person
was
knows
the
whether
spy
to
Dustless had
laugh
cried
or
as he
look
looked
Dustless
suspicious.
She could be considered
Hearing
an
this,
ally.
He was counting on the
Dustless
latter to handle
don't
dress
dress
like
like
this.
this. He glanced
when
at
you
not
meet
deity
palace
future,
buddies.
said,
And don't
Now,
choose
don't
to
believe
meet
me.
Matsumoto
In the middle,
Ranju
you can
was
ask him.
drunk on the
I'm a
at that
sleepy
time.
person.
And the meat
Great
greater
special
voice
in
in
Waco
Mundo
almost
fell out.
disturbing my sleep.
Forget
Destroy
it.
the
He's
Hogoku.
unforgivable.
All the
After so
captains
long,
looked at
closed
should
his
have gathered
eyes
the
for a few
information
seconds,
I
and he
wanted
nodded.
until
His
his
Dustless
eyes
sighed
softly
softly,
extinguished.
and then his eyes
He then said
hard
coldly,
up. Immediately,
Soul
thousands
Society
of shadows
is not a good
clone
place.
It took a lot of time
Especially
and
on
effort to
quiet
dressing up
Hogoku
gorgeously
is a
and it was
big
destroyed so
Hearing
easily
this,
by Dustless.
a soul-stirring
East
smile
Deity
appeared on
Palace wanted to
Candace's
skin
perfect
Dustless
face.
alive. She purposely
It's best to
widened her
destroy it.
collar
That
so that
thing shouldn't
Dustless could
exist
see
in
her
the world.
proud
Cleavage
Yamamoto
more
was
clearly.
relieved, and he was more and more satisfied with Dustless.
Don't tell me you've fallen for me.
Although he had
That's
only
right.
been a Shinigami
I'm born
for
with
less
a
than
natural
year.
beauty.
He was the
I don't
most
even need to make a
satisfied.
move during a duel.
Hearing the head
I just
captain's
need to throw a
words
few
and
flirtatious
East Deity
glances at
Palace's
my opponent,
confirmation, and he'll
all
collapse.
the captain's doubts
Caressing her
disappeared.
long hair
That's
that
it.
cascaded down
Using
like a
Jinjutsu
waterfall
to make Candace
East
laugh
Deity Palace
foolishly.
witness.
She was very
destroying the
narcissistic.
Hogoku was the right thing
Hearing
to do.
this,
Dustless
looked at her
felt
strangely
relieved,
and
and
said
he
with
began
a
to think
frown,
about fusing
"Are you an
the
idiot?
Hogoku.
If I'm really tempted and take forceful
Chapter
measures,
1033.
do you think you can resist with your
Mayuri
strength?"
saw this,
And if you
and
really
although he
believe
was
that
still
your
hesitant,
beauty can
he shut his
change
mouth.
everything,
The head
why don't you
captain
test
just
it on
smiled.
Jogram? If he continued to pursue
One
the
insensible
matter,
man.
it would be considered
Candace's
impure.
proud face
He actually
instantly
admitted
darkened.
it. Aizen was
glared at
surprised to
Dustless
see
fiercely
Sensei
and said
in
with
a
gritted
daze.
teeth,
He stared at
Jogram,
Sensei,
that bastard.
His sharp
I'll
eyes
definitely
able to
be
see
torn into
through
pieces
people's
by
hearts.
him in the
He
future.
tried to destroy the Hogoku,
Dustless responded
but it
with
didn't
silence.
work.
His
Find a
expression
chance
was a
to
little
ask about the
blurry,
details.
and his eyes were
Aizen stood
dozing
up
off.
and said,
"You
Head
bastard."
captain,
Candace
great
was
sinner
very depressed
Sensei
and could not
betrayed
help but
Soul
curse in her
Society.
heart. Dustless
and
had a
joined Waco
drowsy
Mundo.
look on his face.
He should be
with the
handed over
beauty
to
in
Central
front of him.
46.
He did not know how to
sentencing.
appreciate her beauty
That's right.
at all.
That kind of
All right.
traitor should
Have you
be gathered the
executed
information I asked for.
immediately? Dustless
The great
waved his
Shinigami
hand
fell
and asked
to
him
void.
patiently.
Shameful.
He continued,
He's Sensei.
"I don't
is the
expect
mark
you
of
to
Soul
understand
Society
Yawatch's
shame.
abilities.
A bunch
but
of
at
idiots
least
understand the
execute.
abilities
What a
of
joke.
the members of the
That kind of
Stern
perfect
Even
test
though he had
subject
memories
should be
from
put
the
on the
third
operating
dimension.
table I
Dustless
built for
only
Captain
remembered their
Sensei,
abilities
and
did
did
not
not know
a
their
strange
specific
existence
moves.
that can
There
control
were many
both
heaven-defying
void and
people in
Shinigami's
his
Stern
power.
Ritter.
Just
Dustless
thinking about it makes
even
me
remembered
excited.
an
It's a pity
unprecedented
that
pervert.
Hogoku was destroyed.
As long as he
Otherwise,
used his brain,
the group of
and
captains
imagined his
discussed how to
opponent's
deal
tragic
with
death.
Sensei.
His dream
only
could become
Seizen
reality.
and Dustless
He
remained
could directly
silent.
think
Of course,
his opponent.
there was
to
also
death.
Aizen.
I've
who
tried
looked
my
like he
best
was
to
about
find
to
out more
collapse.
details, but I
spent
didn't manage
100
to get the
years,
abilities
and the
of
Hogoku
Yawatch's
was
personal
so
guards easily
and
destroyed.
Jogram
Aizen's heart
himself.
was bleeding.
She
It
handed
took
a
a lot
file
of effort
that
to
recorded the
build
moves of the
Hogoku
Stern Ritter
to
100
Dustless.
years and a
Candace
large number of
said
Shinigami
solemnly,
souls.
In the
Jogram
end,
is
it was
naturally
destroyed by
suspicious.
Dustless.
Once he
Aizen
finds
couldn't
out that
take
I'm
it lying down.
suspicious,
His
he
heart
won't
was
need
breaking
any
apart
so-called
with a
evidence.
ka-ka-ka
He'll
sound.
kill me directly.
I can't let this go so
Speaking
easily.
of which,
I must take
Dustless
revenge.
nodded.
He
must.
suddenly thought of
Aizen glared
who had
fiercely,
invaded Soul
far
Society
more
and
dangerous
had the power
than a
to
deadly
destroy
viper.
Quincy.
He opened his mouth
Aizen swore
and was about to
himself
ask
that in the
Candace about the
future,
details.
he would
when
not let him
something
off
unexpected
so
happened.
easily.
A
A
black
debt of blood
irregular
must
crack
be paid with
flashed in the sky.
Yoshimura
It was
Zuijan
different from the
was
black
also
cavity
covered
of
in
great
cold
sweat.
But it was
Looking at
also
Mayuri's
similar to a
hysterical look
space
of
tunnel.
wanting to dissect Dustless could clearly
East
hear the
deity.
crack.
His nose
sound of movement
was so
inside.
angry.
You really
that it
know how to pick
became
a time.
Crooked.
Dustless
I will
frowned.
definitely remember
A
this.
huge beam of light
Zuozhen stared at
condensed in his
Dustless
hand.
with a
No matter
burning
who
look in his
came
eyes.
out,
He
clenched
clenched
his
his
fist
without
so
hesitation.
tightly that
However,
they were bigger than buckets.
Candace's next
A destructive
move stunned
aura
Dustless.
spread out from his body.
Two little insects. You want to fight me? You're courting death.
Dustless
Chapter
remained
1046.
indifferent.
Although
Candace
Eisen
blocked
and
Dustless
Dustless hid their
decisively
emotions
with a
well.
determined look
Dustless
in her
was
eyes.
secretly
She's my
observing
friend,
changes in
Bambi
their
at a
expressions.
Bathabai.
Dustless
allow
was
you
able
to
to
hurt her.
see
even the
Bambietta
slightest flaw.
is one of the
Speaking
only
of which,
friends I have in
what's
my
wrong
life.
with Hueco Mundo's
Candace's eyes
great
shone
void?
with determination.
While the captains were debating
Her tone
on how
was
to deal
indomitable
with East deity
and without regret.
The head captain's words
You value
shut
relationships
everyone up.
so much.
Everyone's gaze
Dustless
once
was
again
surprised.
turned to Dustless.
He remembered that there were a few
Hearing
women
this,
in the
Dustless had a
Empire,
strange look
but
on his
all of them
face.
were extremely
At that
violent.
time, he had
This Bambietta
severely
that
tricked
Candace mentioned was
Tong
also
Sai
very
and
violent.
Shadoro Thousandhand
A few
Maru.
seconds later,
Although he was
a pretty
sure that
girl
the two
wearing
of
the
them
same
wouldn't die,
military uniform
it must have taken
as
a lot
Candace
of effort.
appeared in front of him.
After all,
She wore a military
it was
cap with the
Lossheed's
symbol
palace,
of the
where
Wanless
several
Empire on
Vasto
it.
lord
Her
and
hair
Juchers
reached her
gathered.
waist. I don't know.
And she wore a short
At that
skirt
time,
with a
I was
heart-shaped
surrounded by a
insignia
group
pinned
of
to her
great
chest.
voids.
She wore a
And my
belt with a
spiritual
heart-shaped
pressure was almost
insignia,
exhausted.
black
After I
stockings,
caught
and
East
long
deity,
boots.
I used the
Perhaps
portal
it was
that
the first
Mayuri
time
made
she
for
had
me to
seen
leave.
Dustless.
Her
Dustless
pure
said,
and
not
innocent
mentioning
eyes were
anything
somewhat
about
absent-minded
Team Zero.
and curious.
Yamamoto nodded.
She looked
and
at
then
Dustless
said
with great
seriously,
interest.
Today's
But when she saw
meeting ends
Candace,
here.
who was standing
Tomorrow,
next to him,
the criminal
her face
East
instantly
deity
became
will be
cold,
handed over to
and
Central
her whole
46.
body emitted a
Phew.
cold
Wu
aura.
Chen's hanging
Candace,
heart was finally
you
relieved.
betrayed his majesty
After fooling
and
the
felt
people
the
of Soul
point
Society,
associating
he could create
with
the
Grim
Hogyoku
Reaper
with peace of mind.
Although
without any
Bambietta looked like a
worries.
young girl.
Looking at the
She was
gloomy
actually an
eyes
old
and
monster
Dustless
who
had
was
some
over 100
sympathy.
years old.
Ever since he
She was
came
much
to
older
Soul
than
Society,
Dustless.
he had
As a member of the
deliberately
Stonecross
ruined
Knights,
Eisen's
she was
plans
also
time
a
and
wily
time
old
again.
fox
Now,
who had lived for
he even
many
took
years.
away the Hogyoku.
Thus, she immediately
Sosuke
saw through the
Aizen knew the
relationship
cause
between
and effect,
Dustless and
he would
Candace.
probably die from
Is
anger.
that so?
After the
Then
meeting,
what are you going to do with us?
all the division captains
Dustless
left.
did not deny
During
it.
this time,
Instead,
Uno
he asked
Hanaretsu
directly,
invited
kill us,
Dustless to
or
the
give us
4th
to
Division
Jugram
for
to
treatment.
claim credit
But
for.
Dustless
But
politely
we're on the same
declined.
side now.
His heart
you can't
was
do
now
it with your
focused
strength.
on the Hogyoku.
Compared to the
After all,
apprehensive Candace,
it was an overpowered
Dustless was
item
undoubtedly
that was not
much
inferior
bolder.
to the Jubi.
He was straightforward
Along
and
the way,
did not hide
Dustless
anything.
hummed a tune.
His words
and
were full of
skipped back to the
provocation
7th
and
Division.
mockery.
Yo,
Boy,
Captain
you're courting
Dustless,
death.
you're in a good mood.
Bambietta,
As soon as he stepped into the
immediately
7th Division
reacted with
captain's
the
office,
strongest strength.
two
She
unexpected
raised her
figures
hands and
entered
condensed a
Dustless's
crystal
sight.
divine bow.
The smile
In
on
an instant,
Dustless's face
arrows
froze,
compressed with
and he said
extremely
bitterly,
high spiritual pressure.
"How did the
shot
two of you
out.
end up like this?
Whoosh, whoosh,
How
whoosh.
dare you?
The
My
powerful
spiritual pressure
arrow
has just
pierced
recovered.
through Dustless.
I will go to Hueco
but it
Mundo
didn't have any
and find
effect.
those great
He stood there and
voids to avenge
scathed.
you."
Looking
The
at
two women were
Bambietta
shouting
with a
Toro,
mocking gaze,
Senju Maru,
silently
and
mocking
Saiso
her.
Tongsun.
What's going on?
But at the moment,
Seeing
they were in a
this,
very bad
Bambietta's
state.
delicate little
Shoutoro,
face was
Senju
dumbfounded.
Maru's skeletal arms
She had clearly
were all
shot
destroyed,
Dustless,
and
but he was
Saiso
completely
Tongsun
unharmed.
had turned from a
He was in
fatty
high
into
spirits
a sexy
and was
beauty.
completely fine.
Such a huge
Brat,
change
don't be so
was
smug.
due to the exhaustion
With a ferocious
of her
look on her
majestic
spiritual
face.
pressure.
Bambietta,
In short,
who
both of them
refused
were
to
wearing
believe it,
ragged clothes
waved her hand
and looked tired.
compressed.
Don't give
even
me
more
that.
spiritual.
Saiso
droplet arrows.
Tongsun and Saiso
She aimed them at
Tongsun
Dustless
did not
in
appreciate it.
Whoosh,
They
whoosh,
looked at
whoosh.
each other. Just
And
like
Shoutoro
before,
of
few
Senju
holes
Maru
appeared
went
in
straight to the
Dustless's
point.
body.
I
But
have
they were
investigated
repaired
the
in the blink of an
Hogyoku.
eye. It is impossible to destroy it so easily.
Smiling,
Even if
he looked
East
at the red-faced
deity admitted it
Bambietta,
himself,
and
I
suddenly
find it
felt
hard
that
to
she
believe.
was very interesting.
He hooked his finger at Bambietta.
Although I
again
can't make
and
something
said
like a
with disdain,
Hogyoku in
"What?
a short time.
Is that all?
I forgot
You
to
can't
tell
even
you that
land a
about
hit on me.
250 years
And you want to
ago.
defeat me?
I was the
Even a
captain of the
3-year-old
12th
wouldn't
Division.
dream of something
Saiso
as
Tongsai's
ridiculous
tone
as you.
was very proud.
You,
As the
Bambietta
director of the
was
Technology
furious
Development Bureau,
when she heard this.
before Urahara
Her slender
Kisuk,
fingers trembled.
he indeed
as
had
she
the capital
pointed
to be
at
proud.
Dustless.
Dustless
She bit her
raised
red,
his
thin
eyebrows
lips and
lowered
lowered
his
his
head,
head,
depressed.
and then asked calmly,
Candace, you don't want
"Let's
to say that
capture
you
him
want to make a
together
Hogyoku
and then offer
and
him
then
to
give it to
Jugram.
me to destroy.
He will definitely
right?
forgive your
With
sins."
all due respect,
Bambietta,
that kind of thing
who
is
had no
impossible
choice
without
through an
decades
olive branch to
or even
Candace,
hundreds of years,
hoping that they could join
Sorry, I
forces
did make
to
it.
deal with
Saiso
Dustless.
Tongsai
Little
smiled
Bambietta
and took out a blue
don't be
bead.
deceived by that.
Of course,
hypocrite
this
Jugram.
so-called Hogyoku
He has been
is
using
just
us
a
from the
superficial
beginning.
thing.
Speaking
It
of
doesn't
Jugram,
have the ability to
Candace
obtain
showed an
Shinigami
expression of
and the
hatred
hollow at
and
the
wanted
same
to tear
time.
him into pieces.
It's just that its hardness
Seeing
is
this,
very close.
Bambietta
to
frowned
Hogyoku
and looked at the
now,
grinning
please
Dustless.
destroy it for me.
She pointed at
Dustless
him
was
and
stunned
said,
and looked at
Candace,
Saiso
don't be
Tongsai
deceived by
and
the
Shadoro
shifty-eyed
Thousandhand
Grim
Maru
Reaper
in surprise.
One look at him,
The
and
blue
you can tell
bead
that he's
was
not
the
a good
same
person.
as the Hogyoku,
It didn't matter what she
Dustless
said,
hid in the Shinto
but the
space.
narrow-minded Dustless'
How long has it
face
been?
immediately
Dustless couldn't
darkened.
help but feel
I'm indeed not a good
speechless.
person.
The
But
time
compared
gap
to
between
Ram
when
and
the Eastern
Yawash,
Sage incident
I
broke
suddenly
out,
feel like
and
I'm
when they
as great
escaped from
as a
Soul
saint.
Society,
Dustless
was at most one
snorted
month.
at the mention of
However,
Yawatch and
the two
Jugran.
abnormal members
How dare
of
you
Squad
insult his
Zero
majesty?
in front of him
Created
created
a
a
Hogyoku,
shouted
in just
angrily.
half a month.
Her eyes,
Although it was
spitting
not a
fire.
real Hogyoku,
Dustless raised his eyebrows.
Dustless
and
absolutely
moved
believed
closer to
that as
Candace,
long as they were
who was
given
having a
enough
headache,
time,
they
said
could
in a low
definitely
voice,
create a Hogyoku.
Your friend has some problems with
at
her
an
head.
unimaginable
She only has
speed.
Yawatch in her heart.
The speed of
and
the
treats
two
him
of
like
you
a god.
is
In
embarrassing.
my opinion,
Dustless's
complained with
expression
cold sweat.
turned cold
He
and
couldn't help
murderous
but
as he
want to
said,
abduct the two
"Why
of
don't we
them
just
to his
kill
camp?"
her?" Candace
Stop talking
shook her
nonsense.
head like a
Destroy
rattle
for me
drum
now.
and took a
If you
deep
can do
look
it,
at
it's
Bambietta.
okay.
But if
The
you
hesitation
can't,
in her
there'll be
eyes
big trouble.
turned
I'm
into
afraid there will
determination.
be another
She decided to
captain
pull her
in the
best friend
infernal
out of
hell.
hell. Size
Is
said,
little
"Tom
Bambietta
Sight,"
pretty?
said in a cold tone.
Candace suddenly
Hearing
changed
this,
the topic.
Wu Chun
and
sneered
asked an irrelevant
and said
question.
without showing
Hearing
any
this,
weakness.
Both
The
Bambietta
conditions
and
proposed by the
Dustless
two of
were
you are
stunned.
really ridiculous.
They looked at Candace
No
in
matter what,
confusion.
I'm
This
still
neurotic
team leader.
woman was making
If you want me to destroy
Dustless's
it, I'll
brain
destroy
go
it.
blank.
Well, I put
What
my
does this have to
face
do
if
with
this
me?
gets out. So what if she's pretty?
Dustless's face
She's
was
still
like
an
a
enemy.
dead pig
Dustless
that was
said
not afraid of
coldly.
boiling water.
Candace's
which
face
made Shadora
flashed with
Thousand Hand
relief.
Maru, and then
And
she
Sayasu,
said mysteriously,
Tongue-Sai grit
I
their
have a
teeth.
way to pull little
If you can
Bambietta
destroy
to
this
our
imitation,
side. Dustless
Waco
was
Mundo
stunned
will
and
let
said
bygones
expectantly,
be bygones.
Let's hear it.
Candace
Seeing that
nodded and said
Dustless
seriously,
was stubborn,
"Go to
Shadora
archery
Thousand Hand Maru
and rape
could
her.
only take a step
Defile
back
her from head to
helplessly.
toe.
After
and
all,
destroy her body.
the two of them were
mind,
indeed
and will.
unreasonable.
It's
in
best
this
if you can
matter.
make her pregnant
They
with your child.
accused Dustless
This way,
without any
little
evidence,
Bambietta will
which was
betray
slander.
us. I'm waiting for you to
Dustless's
say
body
that."
trembled. when he
Dustless
heard that,
laughed in his
and he
heart,
staggered,
and the corner of his
almost fell
mouth
on his back.
lifted into a cunning arc. He pretended to have a headache and said, "It's okay if I use that move to destroy the Hogyoku."
Chapter 10,
But you also know
47.
that the stronger
Not
the
only
move,
was Dustless
the more
petrified,
troublesome it is to control.
but even Bambietta
if it goes
was
out of
also
control,
stunned.
you two
Her
can't
face
blame
was
me.
flushed with shyness.
Sayasu
and she looked as
Tongue-Sai
attractive
and Shadora
as a
Thousand
ripe
Hand
apple.
Maru frowned.
Her
and
ferocious
said in
aura
unison,
was
no
completely
problem
restrained,
and she looked quite cute.
Chapter
Finally,
1035.
she had some unique
Both of them were the
feminine
backbone
charm.
members of
I'm
Team
deaf,
Zero.
right? Can you repeat
and
what you
it
said
was a
just
2v1
now?
situation.
Dustless
Naturally,
reiterated. They
Candace
weren't
looked
afraid
at
of
Dustless with
with
a
a
little
little
dissatisfaction.
and there was no need
After
to be
cursing
afraid.
him for being
This
deaf
was
in her
Soul
mind,
Society.
she
the
explained,
headquarters of Shinigami.
Don't be fooled by
Once
Bambietta's
Dustless had
casual
any
dressing.
malicious action.
In fact,
he could make
she
a move to
values
arrest
something
him
as
and bring him to
worthless
justice.
as virginity.
You two
very
asked for
much.
it. If I don't
be
teach you a
fooled
lesson
by her
that you will
bold
never
appearance.
forget, you will really
Candace
think that I
stared
made
at
a mud
Dustless
and
with
can slap
resentment.
me whenever
Dustless
you want. Opened his mouth,
staring at the plump
intending
figures
to
of the two
refuse,
women,
but he was
Sayo
shocked to find
Toshio
that he was
and
speechless.
Shudora.
He didn't know whether to
Senjumaru,
laugh or
Wuchen
cry.
secretly laughed
Candace's
with bad
dressing was
intentions.
several times
At the same
more
time,
exaggerated
a dark
than
sphere
Bambietta's.
flashed, and
She
she
was
was
this the thing
shamelessly
that destroyed
gossiping about
the
others.
Hogyoku?
Dustless
The
suddenly
moment the
felt that his
truth-seeking ball
shamelessness
appeared,
was
it
not
attracted the two
proportional to
women's
Candace's.
attention like honey.
Noticing
They looked at the
Dustless's
truth-seeking
strange
ball
look
in
Candace
surprise,
immediately
like
understood
curious
that
babies
Dustless
who hadn't
had
grown up
misunderstood
yet.
her.
Unable to
She
take their
hurriedly
eyes off
said,
it.
I
Yes.
said virginity
Dustless
is
smiled
worthless,
and nodded.
but it
The
doesn't
nature
mean
of the
that I
energy
don't care.
seems to be
In
similar
fact,
to the Hogyoku.
I'm the same as Bambietta.
Staring carefully
I'm
at the
still
black
a
sphere
Candace,
for a moment, who spoke
Shadora
bluntly,
Thousand
closed her mouth
eyes
and
lit up.
decisively
So
withdrew
smart.
the word virgin.
Hearing this,
Why did she say
Dustless
this
gave
to
Shadora
Dustless?
Thousand
All in all,
an appreciative
it's not
look.
wrong to
The
listen
foundation
to.
of the truth
It's best to make her
ball
pregnant
was
with your
actually the
child.
yin-yang
In this
release,
way, which was
our
the
alliance
combination
will
of
have
yin
another
release
layer of
and yang
protection.
release.
And
The
Bambietta's
foundation of the
bosom
bosom
friend
friend was the
will
power
be
of
in-laws in the
Shinigami
future
and the power of the void.
Without waiting for
Although there was a
Dustless's
world
reply,
of difference,
Candace
the theory
murmured
of
to
creation
herself,
was the same.
her eyes
But
shining.
such a small
She
ball
felt that
can
she was
destroy
too
the
smart.
Hogyoku.
She had been
Do you
worried
think I'm
about how to
three-year-old
deepen the
child?
alliance with Dustless.
Shadora Thousand
But now it
Maru
seemed that
shouted,
all the
her
problems
face
had been
full of
solved.
doubt.
You're
Such
also
a
my
small
bosom
ball
friend.
was not even as
Dustless
big
couldn't
as
help
the
shaking his
Hogyoku,
head
and
smiling
there was nothing
bitterly in his
special
heart.
about it.
Shut up,
Although
you bastard.
Shadora Thousand
I'm gonna
Maru
kill you.
didn't say anything,
Bambietta,
he secretly
who couldn't
exerted
bear it
Ryatsu.
any longer,
The meaning was
roared like an
self-evident.
enraged
As
tigress.
long as
Her
Dustless dared to
3,000
evade,
willow
he would
strands
be arrested.
stood erect.
Don't be impatient.
And surging
You will
killing
know when you
intent
try it later.
rushed towards
Dustless
Candace and
chuckled.
Dustless.
His tones seemed
Although
to be
Candace's
filled with
method
magic,
isn't
and the
ideal,
spiritual pressure
what she said is
secretly
true.
condensed by
It wouldn't
the
be
Shadora
bad if we could
Thousand
pull
Hand
her in.
Maru. It'd be a good
Also,
idea to use
slightly
her
stagnant
as a weapon against
I've told the two
another,
of you before
and we'd be
that
able
I'm
to
still
catch
not
one
familiar with this
empire
move.
off guard from
If
the
something
inside.
unexpected happens,
ignoring the
or if I hurt the
suffocating
two of you,
murderous aura
please don't
covering
blame
his
me.
body.
Dustless
confirmed
nodded
again
inwardly.
Since I promised
Soon
you,
after,
I won't go back
a
on my
mischievous
words.
smile
The members of
appeared on his
Squad
face as he
Zero
pretended
aren't
to
so
be
despicably
incomparably
vulgar
as to go back
said,
on their words.
Candace is right.
Then she spread out
You
her
better
jade
repent
hand
and be
and
saved.
Sayasu Tongue-Sai
Otherwise, I'll
put the
the
Hogyoku
corner of his
that was
mouth
copied
twitched.
together with Shadora
Dustless
Thousand Hand
realized that
Maru
he
he couldn't say the word
She looked at Dustless
Otherwise,
with provocative
I will
eyes,
capture you and
indicating
torture
him
you
to come
until
at
you
her.
beg for death.
Dustless pretended
I will
to be
make you
embarrassed
sink into the
and
sea
said
of
with some
desire
hesitation,
and never be
"That's
able to
not
rise
very
again.
good.
If an accident happens and you get hurt, then I can't
With a
absolve
wretched and
myself
dark
from
smile on
blame,
his face,
even if I die.
Luchin stared at Bambita's
10,000
plump body
times.
without any scruples.
Just do it, and I won't blame you if an
hearing
accident happens.
Bambita's murderous aura became
Shidoruo,
even
the
more
thousand-hand
intense.
Maru,
Due to her
indicated
excessive
that Dustless
indignation,
didn't need to worry.
the originally
Hearing
invisible
this,
murderous
Dustless
aura
sighed and said,
turned into a
"If that's the
cold
case,
mist
then
that
I'll go all
enveloped
out."
Dustless and
Both of them
Candace.
were Tigress
This was
type,
intolerable.
so he had to make an agreement.
A vast
in advance.
spiritual pressure
Otherwise,
that was not inferior
they would tear
to
up
that
the
of
agreement
Captain
later,
level Grim
and he would
Reaper
cry,
erupted
but have
from a
no
perfect
tears.
body.
Staring at the Hogyoku
with
and
Bambieta
Saiso Tongsai's
center,
hand.
the
Dustless
ground beneath
waved
his
her
hand
feet cracked
and the
open,
truth-seeking ball
forming a huge
immediately
crack
flew
that
out.
rapidly expanded.
At the same time, in the blink of an
Dustless
eye,
pretended to be
it had
surprised
expanded
and
to a
shouted,
radius
"Oh,
of
oh no,
several hundred
it seems that I didn't
meters.
control my
Do you want to
strength
die?
well.
This is
The
the
two
Soul
of you should
Society.
quickly dodge.
Seeing
If
this,
something unimaginable
Candace's
happens,
expression
it will be
changed
very
drastically.
bad. Releasing
Dodge?
such a
You're
terrifying
dreaming.
spiritual pressure
Shiro
would
and
attract
Maru
the
and
attention
Saiso
of Soul Society.
Tongsai looked at
Sooner
each other
or later
and chose to
when that
stand
happened,
still.
Many
letting the
captains would
blacks fear
definitely
attack
rush
them.
over.
The current Quincy,
the moment
was an
the truth-seeking
existence that
ball
couldn't be
touched
exposed
the
to the
imitation
light.
Hogyoku.
So what? As long as I can get rid of you two,
then
before they arrive.
countless cracks flashed on the
Bambieta said
smooth
nonchalantly.
sphere of the Hogyoku.
Not only did the
and it began to
spiritual
fall
pressure
apart
she
layer by
released
layer,
not decrease.
Are you kidding me?
But also
the Hogyoku
increased,
can't be
causing
broken.
Dustless's
After a while,
captain-level
the heavy
Haori
breathing
to
turned
flutter.
into exclamation.
There's so
Saiso
many problematic
Tongsai
girls
shouted
these
in
days.
disbelief.
I'm not
Dustless's
dreaming,
words
right?
immediately attracted
You could try
Candace
slapping yourself.
and Bambieta's
Dustless
attention.
teased,
and
they
his heart,
both glared
looking
at
at
him
Shu
with
and
dissatisfaction.
and
I'm
Saiso
telling the truth.
Tongsai.
You two
who looked a
belong
little
to the
dazed.
brainless type.
A cold light
Dustless
flashed
complained in his
eyes,
heart,
and he
then
ordered in
his
his heart,
expression turned
become
cold.
bigger.
You little things can
Buzz,
be killed
buzz,
in the
buzz.
blink of an eye.
The thumb-sized
You're not even worth
truth-seeking
fighting.
ball emitted a
Hearing
strange
this,
fluctuation,
Bambieta,
and then it
who had a
spun
bad temper,
violently,
was about to
uncontrollably.
explode. Under
If
the
Yawatch wanted to
horrified
kill her,
gaze,
he had to fight,
Shadru,
but when it
Thousand
came to
Hen Maru
Dustless and
he didn't even need to
Saiso
fight.
The
One should know when to
truth-seeking
stop
ball
looking down
became
on others.
dozens of times
Is that
bigger
so?
in an instant.
Bambieta sneered,
and
the
said
black sphere
sarcastically,
expanded rapidly.
If you can really
And
kill
everything
me
that
in
came
the
into
blink of an
contact
eye,
with it was
then I'll
annihilated
agree
into
to your
ashes.
conditions.
In the
and
blink of an
follow your
eye,
lead.
it
After
swallowed
saying this,
Siso.
Bambieta
Tongsai
looked at
and
Dustless
Shadru
with
other than
extreme
Maru.
disdain. Kill
Pucci.
her in the blink of an
Pucci.
eye. What a
Pucci.
joke.
In a
Even
trance,
Yawatch couldn't do
Dustless
this.
vaguely heard the
God
sound
is so
of clothes
unfair.
being torn.
Suddenly looking
Both
up at
of
the
you,
sky,
leave quickly,
Dustless was dejected.
or you will be killed.
Candace
Wu
was
Chan
stunned,
shouted
blinking her
anxiously.
crystal eyes.
At the
she
same
asked,
time,
"Why do you say
he
that?"
quickly closed
You
his
don't
palm.
understand?
Only
Dustless
then did the
glanced at
expanding
Candace
truth-seeking
and sighed in
jade
loneliness.
settle the
My
matter
life is
and
really a
disappear
tragedy.
without a trace.
Now
from
I have
sight.
another teammate
The
who is as
entire
brainless
captain's
as you.
office was in a
Why
mess.
is fate so
and everything was
cruel
erased.
and ruthless?
The room was empty,
Bambieta
and
vomited
only
blood
Dustless
and trembled with
Shadru,
anger.
a thousand Hen
Her
Maru,
ferocious look
and
made it
Saiso
seem
Tongsai
as
were
if she
left.
wanted to tear
Of course,
Dustless
the
apart.
current Saiso
His words
Tongsai
undoubtedly
and Shadru
meant that he could
Thousand Hen
kill
Maru
her with a
were
single
completely
glance.
different from before. They couldn't even touch each other. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The room was destroyed.
Chapter
in a
1048.
gust of cold
Compared
wind
to
hit.
Bambieta,
The two of them
who
shivered at the
snorted
same
disdainfully,
time, and then their
Candace
eyes were
remained
spitting
silent.
fire. Although she had
Dustless
only met
smiled
Dustless
strangely
twice,
and said with a
including
sigh,
this time,
I reminded
she
the
firmly
two of you
believed
before
in
that you
Dustless's
didn't
words.
control your strength
It was not
well,
surprising
and
that a
asked you to
person who was
leave,
already
but
a
you
miracle
insisted
could create
now,
any miracle.
You're suffering the
because his
consequences
very
of your own
existence
actions.
was a miracle. This guy,
Shadru,
her eyes
Maru,
flickered,
and
captivating
Saiso
one's soul.
Tongsai,
Candace,
both vomited
who was
blood,
lively
and their
by
lungs
nature,
were about to explode,
remained silent,
and their silver
her
expression
teeth were
calm.
creaking. She sized up Dustless from the corner of her eyes.
Chapter 10,
and a strange
36.
feeling spread.
Shadoro
Senjamaru
Dustless
and
did not
Saiso
say a word in the
Tongsai's
face of
faces
Bambieta's
turned
mockery.
green. It was
Their
not that he
spiritual
was
pressure
powerless
pressed
to fight
on
back,
Dustless,
but that he did not bother to answer.
They were like wild beasts
Seeing
that
Dustless
wanted to crush
remain
Dustless.
as indifferent
Ka,
as a
ka, ka.
statue. His bones seemed to
Bambieta
show signs of
withdrew
damage
her spiritual
and
pressure.
bean-sized cold
After
sweat
all,
fell like
this was
raindrops.
Soul Society.
You too.
And
I have
releasing
already reminded
spiritual
you to leave
pressure
before,
endlessly would
but you
attract
were the one who
Grim
insisted
Reaper's
on
attention
it.
sooner.
Now
or
that
later.
something has happened,
Bambieta could
you
not
can't
help
blame
but
me
think.
indiscriminately.
Staring
right?
at Dustless
Dustless
and Candace,
deliberately
she frowned.
made a
If
difficult
they fought,
expression.
she would be the
said,
one who would be defeated,
but he was secretly
and captured
happy
in
his heart.
A moment
He secretly
later,
glanced
her
at
eyes
Shadoro,
lit up,
Senjamaru,
and she suddenly came
and
up with a
Saiso
plan.
Tongsai.
Since neither of
Perfect
us
Snow
wants
White
to be
body.
caught by the Grim
His
Reaper,
eyes were rolling.
why don't we fight
And he was
in a more
particularly
interesting
wretched.
way?
All of this
Bambieta
was hidden very
withdrew
well.
her flames
Saiso
and put on an
Tongsai
elegant
and
smile
Shadoro
with a hint of
Senjamaru were
complacency
furious.
and cunning.
So they
Candace
didn't
remained
notice
silent
Dustless.
and
It
looked
wasn't
at
until a
Dustless.
few breaths later
The
that
night is
Dustless
long,
picked up
and I have
a few
nothing to
pieces
do.
of rags.
Tell me
with
what
a
you want to
disgusted
do.
face.
I hope you won't break
How
the
dare you be
contract
naked in
because
broad
you
daylight.
can't afford
What a
to lose.
disgrace.
Dustless
Both of you are a
glanced at
disgrace
Bambieta
to the Grim
indifferently.
Reaper.
This
And put his
reprimand
hands
was
back
more
into his
uncomfortable
sleeves.
than
No
killing
wonder you are in
Shadoro,
cahoots with Candace.
Senjamaru,
You are
and
indeed
indeed straightforward. Bambietta looked at the Dustless in surprise. The two of them stared and had a whole new level of respect and took the rags handed over in a hurry. Dustless and Candace clearly had the upper camera in a 2v1 situation. The next time I encounter Dustless was willing to give up the advantage. I can take it. He was indeed broad-minded. Seeing that Shiduro Senjumaru, the next sentence made Bambietta lose all Tongsai blocks the secret department just treated as playing house with a kid who hasn't smacked his lips unhappily. I still have things to do. His heart. Dustless frowned and said impatient, right?
Saiso
Tongsai
stared
pay
at
the
Dustless
price.
ferociously.
Bang Baeda
gritted his teeth,
clenched her fist,
and said word by
gritted her
word.
teeth.
Shidoro
Soon after,
Senjumaru's
she
face
sneered.
was also flushed.
Did you just say that you
if
can
it weren't
kill
for the
me
fact
in
that
the
she
blink
was
of an
only
eye?
using
Let's
rags
use this
to
as a
cover her
bet.
body,
If you can
it was
really do it,
inevitable that her
I'm
body
willing
would
to be
be
your
exposed
servant.
during the fight.
What if I can't do
She
it?
definitely
Dustless
didn't
asked
mind
curiously
using what she
while
had
rubbing
learned
his
her life
chin.
to
Then the
fight
two
to
of
the
you will
death.
be slaves.
The two of you.
Bambietta replied
I've already said
with
it
a cold
before.
laugh.
I haven't
This is
mastered
not
that move
fair.
yet.
Candace
stood
stood
up
up
and
and
objected.
You're the ones
Her
who have to
beautiful
depend on
eyes
it.
were gloomy.
You're also the ones
If
who
Wuchen
promised
won, not
Bambietta
to pursue
would
the
become
matter,
his slave,
even if an
and
accident
she would get
happens.
nothing.
Why?
On the other hand,
Are you going back on your words?
if
Now?
Wuchen lost,
Dustless,
she would
said
suffer
without
together
any
with
ripples.
Wuchen.
Two
No
vast
problem.
spiritual pressures
Dustless
locked
raised his
onto him,
eyelids,
but he
and
was
said
completely
indifferently,
indifferent. This guy is so strong.
He's
He's
definitely
this,
not an
Candace
ordinary
immediately turned her
Saiso
spearhead
Tongsai
and bombarded
and Shidoro,
Dustless
Senjumaru,
her saliva flying, and their eyes
flickered
flickered for a moment.
Are you kidding me?
The high
You
density,
are not qualified
suffocating
to decide my
Ryatsu
fate.
was removed.
We are allies
If you dare
now,
to go out and
we don't
gossip,
even have this
I will
basic
tear you
trust.
into pieces.
Let's just go our separate
Wuchen
ways.
waved his hand,
glancing
to
at
indicate
Candace.
that
Dustless
Shidoro
replied,
Senjumaru,
"Besides,
didn't need to
the
worry.
winner of this
He
boring
said,
competition,
although this
will
time's
definitely
careless
be
mistake
me.
caused a big
Also,
accident,
I can have
everyone
a little
is
slave
safe
to
and
play
sound.
with. How
This is
great
the
would that
best.
be? How can I go
Dustless
out
stared
and
at
say more?
Bambietta with
At
an
least you know what's
invasive
good for you.
gaze and
The
laughed
hostility in
sinisterly.
Saiso
His wolf-like
Tongsai's
gaze
eyes
could
flashed
ignore
away.
the existence of clothes.
Even so,
It was very wretched.
she was still gasping
Whoosh,
for
whoosh,
breath.
whoosh.
The
The
two
spirit
majestic
seed
peaks
arrow
in front of her
immediately
were still
pierced
trembling.
through Dustless.
She was hit hard today,
but it was still
originally.
useless.
Saiso
Tongsai deliberately looked for trouble with Dustless
glanced at the
today
frustrated
to take
Bambietta
revenge
with
for
pity
what
and
happened
said
in Hueco
calmly,
Mundo.
This kind
Who
of
would have thought
ordinary
that she would be
attack
checkmated
is
by
useless.
Dustless.
Only
Not only
after
did
an
she
eye
suffer
later
a double
uses
loss,
perfect holy
she even
body
had her naked
or
body
activates.
seen. Just thinking
Holy
about it
word.
made her blush.
Could he attack
and her
my physical
body heat
body?
up. A
Until
strange
now,
feeling spread
Dustless still
through her
couldn't
body.
figure out how
He can really
Annihilator
destroy,
could elementalize.
Hogyoku,
Grumble,
compared with
grumble.
Saiso
At this
Tongsai,
moment,
who blushed
Dustless's
and
stomach
found it hard
started
to accept.
Shidoro,
He suddenly felt a little
Senjumaru
hungry
saw
and said,
through it.
after a
getting
little
late.
embarrassment,
Let's start now.
she returned
and
to her
finish
usual
this
calmness
as soon as
and
possible.
wisdom.
You can go
In this
back
regard,
and eat.
Dustless was
After
slightly
saying
surprised,
that,
but he was
Dustless's
relieved.
pupils changed.
For death
The
gods
demonic
like Shidoro,
and mysterious
Senjumaru,
eternal
and
Mangekyo,
Uno
Sharingan
Hanaretsu,
appeared.
who had
The
lived
berserk
for
eye
thousands
power
of years,
made one's
the
soul
moral
tremble.
and theoretical
If one was
concepts
stared at
that
by
couldn't
that
be
eye,
violated
one's
in the eyes
soul
of the
would be
secular
lost.
people were
Grumble.
worthless in their eyes.
The two girls looked at
the so-called
mysterious
body
and
maybe
noble
just a
eternal
simple skin for
Mangekyo's
these death
Sharingan
gods who were
in a
thousands
daze.
of years old.
For some reason,
after living for
they suddenly
thousands
felt
of
a
years,
sense of
the desire to have a
insignificance,
naked body
especially
had long
Bambietta.
disappeared. She suddenly
No
felt
desire
a little
and
regretful
no desire.
and felt that she had been
Dustless
tricked.
saw more
Look
depression
into my
and
eyes.
unhappiness
This sentence
in Shidoro,
attracted Bambietta's
Senjumaru's
attention.
eyes.
She instinctively
According to
looked
Dustless's
at
guess,
Dustless's
the reason
eyes.
why Shidoro,
The moment their eyes
Senjumaru
met,
felt helpless and
Bambietta
tangled,
suddenly
was that she
felt
was
that the
disgusted by a
secret in her
kid who
heart
was
had been
dozens
seen
of times
through.
smaller than her.
She instinctively
In other
wanted
words,
to close
at this
her
moment,
eyes.
Shidoro
However,
Senjumaru
it was too
was
late.
full of anger.
Tsukuyumi.
But there was no
Two
place
simple
to
words
vent it.
came out of Bambietta's
Why don't the two of you
dry
go back
lips.
and tidy up your
Bambietta's
clothes
bright
first.
eyes
We can talk later.
immediately dimmed,
Seeing the naked body,
as if someone had covered
Dustless
her
was
face
extremely
and robbed her of her
uncomfortable
ability
for a
to think.
while.
Shidoro
Under
Senjumaru
Candace's
and
horrified
Saiso
gaze,
Tongsai
Bambietta
might be able
fell
to see
to the
the most
ground weakly.
primitive ambition
Candace's
of human nature,
eyes locked
but
onto
he,
Dustless,
who was young
She was
and
shocked to
vigorous,
find that he didn't
couldn't
move at
do
all.
it.
He
His
didn't even
eyes were
blink.
full of
In his
burning
eyes,
flames. There was only
Dustless
an
took a deep
insignificant
breath and
ripple
tried to calm
like
himself
water.
down.
At the
Then
same time,
Bambietta was killed
he
instantly.
impatiently asked
It was
them
as
to
simple
leave.
as blowing air.
A man
looking
and a
at the
woman
motionless
alone in a room.
Bambietta on the ground.
And the two of you are
Dustless
still dressed like
stretched
this.
and sighed
It
with
is
emotion.
inevitable
From now
that there will be
on,
misunderstandings.
there's one less
if you were
beautiful
seen.
girl in the
Shidoro
world,
Senjumaru
and one more
and
personal
Saiso
maid who was a
Tongsai
slave
looked at each
or
other.
a servant.
Instead of showing signs of retreating, they took the initiative to draw closer to Dustless.
Chapter
They looked at him
1049.
with bright eyes.
At this moment,
and there was a touch
in a
of
world
passion in their
of
eyes.
Tsukuyumi,
Is it
Bambietta,
possible that the two of them
who had
like
just
me,
arrived,
I'm so
was
handsome and
complaining
strong,
incessantly.
is right that they like
Dustless
me.
didn't
This is not a
torture her,
coincidence,
but just threw
but
her
inevitable.
into a dead
With a
world alone.
narcissistic smile,
There was no
on
need
his
to waste
face,
too much time.
Dustless thought
He could
about
just
it.
wait for her
He didn't know where he got a
to
bowl of hot
collapse
tea
on its
from.
own.
Just
And he
imagine
poured it in
how
his mouth in
uncomfortable
high
it would be
be to be thrown
getting close
into
to
a
Dustless's
desolate world
face.
alone.
Shidoro
In
Senju
addition,
Maru
Dustless
asked
also
hopefully,
showed Bambi
what is the
clip
principle of the technique
Busby
that destroyed the
attacking
Feiko
Gyoku
just
this
now?
way.
She
Dustless's
bowed
old
down to
face
me.
suddenly
In the real
darkened
world,
when he heard that.
Dustless strolled to Bambi.
He couldn't
at his
help
side.
but complain,
Looking at her
"You looked at
pale
me with
and
shining
terrified,
eyes just to
smiling
ask this
face.
question, right?"
Laughing
After
secretly.
that, Dustless
His tone
looked at
was like a
Shidoro
prank.
It's still
Senju
too far
murmured
away.
nervously.
Little Bambietta
Nonsense,
won't
of
be
course it is.
defeated so
Chidoro
easily.
Senjumaru
Candace
said
shook her head
naturally.
and looked
Seeing
at Dustless's
Dustless's
darkened
surprise,
face,
he rolled
especially
his
the
eyes.
eternal Mangekyo
Do you think I like you?
Sharingan
How is
that
that
attracted
possible?
her attention.
You have thin
She
arms
immediately
and legs.
said with some
Who like
hunger,
you is blind?
"What kind of eye is
Don't
that?
say this kind of
I've
joke
never
in the
heard of
future.
Shinigami
It
having
is not
such an
funny at
ability."
all.
Or
Puff.
is it the
All
ability
the
of
hot
your
tea
Zanpakuto?
in his lungs was
This is a
sprayed out.
dojutsu
Dustless's
called
good mood
Sharingan.
also
In order to
turned
get
cloudy.
it, I paid
He
a
cursed
lie.
in his heart
His
and
eyes
swore
swore
that
that
he
he
would
would
not
not
easily
easily
forgive
Shidoro.
Dustless's tone had a
Senjumaru
rare touch of
in the
melancholy, as if he was immersed in memories.
Chapter
His soul began to
10,
wander,
37.
recalling the
Hearing
past.
this,
The
Dustless
memories of
resisted the
more than
desire to
half
beat
a
up
century of
Chidoro.
vicissitudes
Senjumaru
began to slowly
blushed
rewind like a
and
movie.
quivered.
Candace
Thin
looked
arms
at
and legs?
Dustless in surprise.
Sure enough,
standing
I'm
still.
thin.
Everyone
Everyone
had
had
a
envious
sad
of my
past,
figure.
and
Because
no
of
one
the
was an
Juby's
exception.
body,
Dustless's
despicable
skin was
bastard.
exceptionally good.
I will not let you go.
Exquisite. The
and
sudden
far wider
scolding
than a girl's
disturbed the
skin.
peace.
So that's how it is.
Dustless's
These two
confused
tigers want to
eyes
learn the
disappeared,
truth-seeking ball,
and he
Dream
returned
on.
to his usual
The
calmness.
confusion in his
He
eyes
squatted down
disappeared,
and looked at
and
Bambietta,
a flash of understanding
sweating
flashed.
profusely.
Dustless,
My cute little
directly
maid,
refused
why are you so
indifferently.
upset?
Sorry,
I didn't torture you.
that kind of thing.
Bambietta's
You will
pretty
never learn
face
it.
fell
Just
when
like
she heard
Shinigami
this.
will never
Dustless
learn the void
indeed
flash.
didn't
You can
torture
think of
her
it as the
but
racial
being
gap.
thrown into a
Dustless
desolate
enjoyed
world
the
and
truth-seeking
living alone
ball
was worse
alone
than being
in
killed.
this world.
I have
The two
fulfilled my
looked at each
promise,
other,
and now it's
didn't
your
say
turn.
much.
Dustless
Or
said
they didn't have
seriously
much
as
hope,
he looked at Bambietta,
and just asked
whose
casually,
face had turned green.
just like some
Me,
Zanpakuto's ability.
Bambietta's
It was
entire
impossible to
face
learn it.
was filled with
These two
black
little
lines.
girls must want to
Her
use
heart
my
felt weak,
truth-seeking ball
and she wanted to
deal
retreat
with others.
She had just
Is
said
it
that
you a
she would
bot?
be a slave,
Although the
or a
strange
servant,
look in their eyes
but it was just a
disappeared
casual
in a
remark.
flash.
He didn't have the
Dustless
confidence
still
to
caught it.
admit it.
To some
The
extent,
consequences
the
of
truth-seeking
little
ball
Bandy's
was the
violation
natural
of the
enemy
agreement
of all
are
things
very
in the world.
serious, and
Candace
anything it
stood up
touched would
and
collapse.
said in a threatening tone.
There are many
Although
benefits
this guy looks
to
decent,
joining Team
he's
Zero.
actually very
After a while,
lecherous.
Saisatong
He and the captain
also
of the fourth
temporarily
division,
put aside his
Uno
personal
Walleye,
grudges with Dustless,
who's also known
and
as the
decisively
first Sword
threw
Eight
out an olive
in
branch
the
to
Empire,
tempt him,
are involved.
Team Zero
Also,
is unique. He recruited
Sorry,
I appreciate your
good-looking
kindness,
students,
but I have no interest
They actually
in Team
know that
Zero.
Uno
Don't
Hanaretsu
force me.
is
Dustless
the first Sword Eight.
shook his head.
It seems
and
like Wanless
refused
Empire
at the
knows a
moment.
lot about
He had to
Soul
focus on
Society's
fusing with the
internal
Hogyoku.
affairs.
He didn't
Dustless
have time
frowned.
to join Team Zero.
Wanless Empire
The
was
so-called
much
Team
harder
Zero
to deal
was
with
just
than Aizen
so-and-so,
Sosuke.
except for Sayasa Tongsai, who was barely younger.
Sosuke
The
Aizen's
others were
understanding
monsters
of
who had
war from
lived for
1,000
thousands
years
of
ago,
years,
but
but
the
the
strength
strength
they
they
showed
showed
was
was
not
not
flattering.
if not worse.
The hope in the eyes
All
of
information
Saiso
about Quincy
Tongsai
had been
and
erased
Shidoro
from Soul Society.
Senjumaru were
Aizen's
also
understanding of Quincy,
although they were
was
disappointed,
limited to a
they no
few
longer
words.
forced Dustless.
I'll ask you one last time.
After all,
Are you willing to
he was
surrender
still loyal
or
to
go
Soul
to hell
Society?
to accompany Busby?
Excessive oppression
Dustless
would be
asked
counterproductive.
indifferently.
Time flew
as he condensed
and
a few
huge
hours
light
passed in
on
the
his
blink of an
finger,
eye, and
The two
pointed
members
it
of
at
Team
Bambietta.
Zero left
You
one
killed Busby?
after another.
Bambietta
and Higashi
said,
was
in
temporarily
surprise.
detained in the
She
prison.
then looked at
On the
Dustless's
surface,
cold face.
it seemed
and
that
said with a
everything was
bitter
over.
smile, but in
Do
fact,
I have any other
the
choice
undercurrent
now?
was turbulent.
Also,
the
is the scene you
Hogyoku
showed
that he
me
painstakingly
in that strange
developed
world
was
real?
destroyed by
Dustless
Dustless.
nodded and
How
pointed
could
at
Aizen
Candace.
Sosuke
If you don't believe
be
me,
reconciled?
you can ask the
There was
person
no other
involved.
way than to
The
create
image he was
another
referring
one.
to was probably
It
the
seems
one
that it will take a
where
while.
Busby
in the
sneaked
empty
attacked
captain's
Candace.
office. About an
Dustless
hour later,
muttered to himself,
Bambietta, holding
could
a
barely
blue
stand
gem
up.
in his hand.
Her
Just a
hostility
moment,
towards
the
Dustless and
Hogyoku,
Candace
the
had lessened a
Hogyoku,
lot.
the Hogyoku,
Jug-Ram
for
and
someone who had
Yawash,
countless
those
unique
two
skills,
despicable
it was a piece of a
stars.
piece, a
To
simple
think that we
matter.
trusted them
For
so
Dustless
much.
has to
How
know.
dare they treat us
However,
like
what made him
dispensable chess
confused
pieces?
was that after the
I must
two
have been
Hogyoku
blind in the past.
perfectly merged,
I must kill them
there was
both.
no reaction at all.
After Bambietta understood,
It was as
what
if they had
happened.
fallen asleep.
She was filled
and the
with
light
righteous
that flickered from
indignation.
time to time.
Just like
also
Candace
stopped.
She wanted to take
It-
revenge on
know
Jug-Ram
it.
and Yawash.
It's just an incubation
Seeing
period.
this, Dustless
It will take a
chuckled.
while before
He
it
liked
wakes
dealing
up.
with honest,
Dustless
and
was no
straightforward
longer
people.
worried.
To
After
put it
sensing
nicely,
the changes
they were
in the
simple-minded
Hogyoku.
and
The
simple-minded.
Hogyoku had just
to put it bluntly,
fused,
they were
and it would take a
brainless.
while for it to work.
However, when
Dustless
it wakes up,
liked
the
brainless
Hogyoku
people,
will
dealing
work,
with a black
and it will
belly
give
and
birth
intelligent
to an
woman
independent
like
consciousness.
Uno Hanaretsu
In the dark laboratory,
sometimes
times
Aizen
made him
Sosuke
uncomfortable, and
a smart woman
Jin
was often
came here
annoyed.
more often
At least
after they learned
that was what
the
Dustless
Hogyoku
thought.
was destroyed.
It was okay to be a little
except for the
stupid.
necessary
All right,
occasions.
I need
They
to tell you
stayed
here
here
something
almost
important.
every day.
It has to do with
Captain
the future
Aizen,
of
are you sure you want to
Empire.
create a new Hogyoku?
As if she remembered something.
Jin's voice
Vanbieta's voice
sounded
became
in the silent
several
room.
times
Yes.
louder.
Aizen's serious
Sosuke
expression
answered frankly.
She revealed a top
Although it's a
secret
pity that the
made
Hogyoku was
Dustless's
destroyed,
expression changed.
it shows that we were on
The
the right
future of
track.
Wanless Empire,
Although Higashi's
that is
fusion
indeed a
with the
big piece of
Hogyoku
news, was different from
Wu-chun
what I
nodded
expected.
non-committal.
The power he showed
Then
at
he
that time
teased
was
and
indeed
guessed,
beyond the
what is it
Shinigami
specifically?
and Hollow's
Jugram
dimension.
wouldn't want to form an alliance
Aizen's
with
voice was
Sosuke
firm
Aizen
and
unquestionable.
Hearing this,
His eyes were
Bambietta's
empty,
eyeballs
and he
almost
looked like
fell
he
out.
was in a daze.
She said in disbelief,
But in fact,
you
it
must be
wasn't
a
the
Quincy.
case.
A
Jugram
careful
wants to
person
form
could
an
see
alliance
that
with
Aizen's eyes were
Sosuke
burning
Aizen.
with a raging fire. Glaring at Aizen, Ikamura Jin guessed that Aizen saw
Chapter
his future
1050.
as the ruler
Dustless
of the world,
opened his mouth,
overlooking
although he
all
was
living
surprised.
things. He still
Right.
shook his head.
Jin seemed to
Jigram's
remember
risky
something
move
and said,
was within
Captain
Dustless's
Aizen,
expectations.
you seem to have made a mistake.
Quincy's goal was naturally
Captain
to destroy
Dustless
Shinigami
only destroyed
and kill
the
Soul
Hogyoku you
Aizen's
created.
goal was the same.
Urahara's Hogyoku,
Even if the two sides
is
hit it
still
on his
off.
hands, it would still be in
Jin's
line
words
with each other's
pulled
goals.
Aizen back to
After
reality.
all,
And he said
Shinigami
calmly,
was their enemy.
That's normal.
But I don't think
The
Aizen will
Hogyoku
cooperate
is used
with
to break
Jugram.
the boundary
After a
between
while,
Shinigami
Dustless
and
confirmed.
Hollow. Although it was
Destroying my
just his personal
Hogyoku
guess,
was
he was
just a
very
cover-up.
certain. As for the
Indeed,
remaining one,
Wanless
he is
Empire's
probably
internal
studying
affairs
it
say
slowly by
that
himself.
Aizen is an ambitious
Surpassing
man
the limits
who wants
of
to
the
become a god.
Shinigami
The
and
chances of
Hollow.
him lowering
Such
himself
an unprecedented
and submitting to
dream
Quincy
was something
are
everyone
zero.
yearned for.
Candace chimed
Sosuke
in.
Aizen
Dustless
had
looked at the
already
two
expected
and
that
asked
Spotless
curiously,
would fill his own
"Then
pockets.
what's your Empire's
But that's
evaluation
good.
of me?
I'll leave
No
the
matter how
Hogyoku
bad
to
I
you
am,
for safekeeping.
I'm still better
Once
than
I'm
my
done with the
predecessor,
Hogyoku,
East
I'll
Sendai,
use Kyoka
right?
Sujetsu
Hearing
to tear
this,
apart that man's
Candace
disguise
and Bambietta
and use the power
looked at
of
each
Soul
other with a
Society
hint
to
of
deal with
ridicule
him.
in their eyes.
Speaking of
It
which,
can't be that he's
a
not
group
even
of
as
people
good
with
as
enough
that
power
kid
to
from
destroy
East
the
Deity
world
Palace,
obeys
right?
Central
Wu-chan
40S
covered his
excess
old
orders.
face in
Soul
disappointment,
Society
as
is
if he were
rotten to the
speechless.
core. That's not it. The two women shook their heads at the same time. Chapter
Bambietta said,
1038.
Jugram
Time
recently
flew
created
by,
a special
and
fighting
3 months
force,
passed in the
and
blink
you're
of an
one of them.
eye.
Wu-chan was
Shinigami's
stunned when he heard
lifespan was
that,
extremely
and asked
long,
subconsciously,
and 1 or 2 years
special
was
combat
nothing to
power?
them.
You didn't
At this
remember
moment,
long.
Dustless was at the Shin
There were indeed
Spiritual
special
Arts Academy.
existences like
East
special
Sun
combat
Mei was
powers,
indeed,
but
a
they would only
ruthless
appear
person.
after
When
he
Yawatch
defected,
fully recovered
he killed
and
his vice
passed Soul
captain,
Society.
as well as
Right.
many Shinigami
No matter
in their
what,
seats.
you have to
And
be
even a
careful.
Shinigami in
Jugram
7th
isn't a good
Division with
person.
good potential.
Bambietta
Although
frowned
Dustless was
and
now
reminded
captain
him
with
he
good
was no
intentions.
different from a general.
Dustless
showed a dissatisfied
under the
expression
authority of the
and
head
scolded
captain,
with a straight
he came to the
face.
Shin Spiritual
I won the
Arts
competition
Academy
just
to pick
now.
the Shinigami.
Didn't I
that he
say
liked.
that you're not allowed
This
to
treatment
talk
was
about
not
you?
bad.
You have to call
It can
me
be
young
said that the
master.
head captain thought
Bambietta's
highly
delicate
of
face
Dustless.
was full
The
of
Shin
confusion.
Spiritual Arts Academy
She couldn't even call
was a
Dustless
gathering
Lord.
place for geniuses.
She had to call him young master.
And it was also
This
a thorn in the
seemingly
head
trivial
captain's
matter
heart.
was very
How
important
boring.
to Dustless.
Why do I need a member?
He was even
I alone
narrow-minded
am
and couldn't be
enough.
changed.
Wu-chan let out a
Speaking
long
of
sigh
which,
and
thinking
walked
of
into
the
the
great
sloppy
voided
academy by
juches that
himself.
invaded Hueco
His
Mundo,
frivolous expression
Dustless
was filled
asked,
with
Soul
laziness.
Society invaded a great
At this
void
moment,
with the ability
a figure
to kill
suddenly
Quincy.
appeared in front of him.
You killed it.
Looking closely,
The two
it was
asked in
Sosuke
unison with
Aizen.
nervousness.
Of course,
Dustless
there was
nodded.
also a captain
The mantis
beside him.
great void was
Jin
indeed
Ikamaru
killed by him. What are these
Cut
two
into
bastards
pieces
by
doing
Hado
here?
90? Looking at the
That's
two
bad.
in confusion,
The memories and soul
Dustless
of the great
was driven
void
by
you killed will
curiosity
all fall
as he
into
walked
Yawatch's
over.
hand.
Ishin Kun, long time no
Bambietta
see,
said
a
solemnly.
gentle voice came from
Bambietta
behind,
said
and
solemnly.
Dustless's footsteps
This meant that
suddenly
Yawatch would
stopped.
know the moves
Turning around,
and characteristics
he saw
of Wu-chan
Uno
when he
Hanaretsu
woke up in the
and
future.
Yuko Toru.
No,
with a gentle
you're
smile
mistaken
on their
about
faces.
one thing.
Yeah, long time
Seeing
no
that the
see.
two of them had
Dustless
misunderstood,
scratched his head.
Dustless
and smiled.
immediately
His gaze
corrected
was
them.
somewhat evasive.
I don't care about that.
These days,
I don't even know
most
how
of his
many
time was
abilities
focused
and
on
moves I
Hogyoku.
have.
Uno Hanaretsu had invited Dustless
What I
to
care
a couple
about
of gatherings,
is that since voids
but he
can
had
obtain
rejected
the
her
ability
with
to
various
kill
excuses.
Quincy.
The
Dustless
Grim Reaper
had
should be
even
able to do
rejected
the
the head
same.
captain's
Looking at
meetings
Candace
several
and
times.
Bambietta
Captain Uno
expectantly,
Hana,
Dustless's
oh no.
face was
Retsu,
full of hope. Why did
if
you come to the
possible,
Shin Spiritual
he
Arts
very much
Academy?
wanted to seize
Seeing
Yawatch's
Uno
ability.
Hana Retsu's
This
expression,
turned
theoretically,
dark. It should be
Dustless quickly
possible,
changed the
but
way
we
he
don't know the
addressed her.
specifics.
I'm curious
The
as to
abilities
why
of the
you've come
Sterner
to the
regiment
Truth
are
Central
all given
Spiritual
by
Arts
Yawatch.
Academy.
Uno
Candace
looked
instantly
at
understood
Dustless
and
meaningfully,
understood
then explained
Dustless's intention.
Today is the
graduation
He was probably
day
aiming
of the
for
true
Yawatch's
Central Spiritual
abnormal
Art
ability.
Academy's Death God
But I
class.
advise you,
There
young
are few
master,
matches,
you should
so I
stop
came to
dreaming.
prevent the students
Seeing
from getting
Dustless
injured.
staring at her
Those
gloomily,
grim reapers
Bambietta's
actually
expression
graduated.
stiffened.
No
She
wonder the
quickly
head captain
changed her words
asked me
and
to
said
pick the team
unwillingly.
members.
Although I
Dustless's
don't know how
doubts were
swept
swept
away
away is
as two
those who
figures
have seen how
appeared in his
terrifying he is are
Why did
all
Captain
afraid of him.
Eisen and
Bambietta
Captain
said
Ikamar
in a
Jin
trembling
come here?
voice.
This has
Her
nothing
tone was
to do
also
with them.
full of
They
fear
can't
and
be
dread
here
because
to
the
pick
name
members,
Yawatch
right?
was
Jin
to some
Jun is
extent
right.
a god.
Captain Eisen's
Forget
purpose is the
Go
same
back.
as yours.
If you come out late,
a few days ago,
Jugram,
some
who
Roman
is
naturally
great void realm
suspicious
experts
will
inevitably
inevitably
be
be
suspicious.
Almost all the members
smile,
of the 5th
Dustless
Division who
ordered them to
rushed
leave.
over to help were
This
killed.
guy is not bad.
Bambietta
Uno, while I
secretly
glanced
sighed
at
and
Dustless,
said with a
and
worried
muttered in her
tone,
heart,
"You didn't
Although
go to the captain
Dustless
meeting these
sometimes
days, so you
looked
might not know,
sloppy,
but
and
some
had a cynical
places in Soul
attitude
Society
toward
have been
everything.
invaded by
She could
great
feel
voids.
that Dustless was
Many members
not
of the
a cold-blooded
5th and
person
3rd
like
Division
Juggler.
have died,
Especially when she was
and
quite
many
close
souls
with
with the
Dustless
potential to
just
become
now.
death gods. have been
Bambietta
devoured.
felt that he was
Yuan Lu's
At
I
least,
scolded Captain
he had body
Yin many
temperature.
times because
The
of
night
this.
sky of Soul
such a
Society
thing?
was full of
Dustless
stars,
turned to look at
and the
Uno
scenery
while
was
I
very charming.
and asked in surprise.
As night fell,
Most of the members
Dustless
who
walked
died were from
alone
the
to the
3rd
7th
and 5th
Division.
Divisions.
He thought that when he
and
returned
many
to the
powerful
division,
souls on
he would be
drifting
greeted
Soul
with
Street
good wine
disappeared
and
as
delicious
well.
food.
And every
Who would have
time the
thought that
great
the
void
entire
appears,
captain's office
it's at the
was
weakest
filled with
place
the strong
in Soul
smell of
Society.
alcohol.
And
Uno,
the
while
pungent
I
smell
tilted her
made
head
people
and looked at
retreat.
Dustless in
A
surprise.
soldier's drunken.
She smiled
A general's
and
drunken.
said, "This
Shin
saying
Jun's
is true.
intelligence is
Opening the
indeed
door of the captain's
extraordinary.
office.
You've been
Dustless
cooped up in the
stepped
7th Division
The first
all
thing
day,
he saw was
but you still
Hinamori,
know these
Rukia,
things.
and Matsumoto
This,
Ranjiku.
I heard it from a
They
student
were all
who
drunk
passed by
and
just
completely
now.
unconscious.
Dustless's smile
Forget
froze.
it. I'm in a good
He
mood
quickly
today.
changed the topic
I'll let you
and
go.
said,
I
picking
heard
up
that
the
there are a
blanket on the
lot of
sofa
geniuses who
and covering
graduated
them.
this time.
Dustless turned
I hope
around
that I,
and
a
left.
general without
Tiredness
could
spread
have a few
all
more
over his
outstanding
body,
subordinates,
and he had to find a
although
suitable
his
place
mouth
to rest.
was like this.
However,
Dustless was
got off and liked
exchanging
to play tricks on
flirtatious
people.
glances.
Sometimes,
Clearly,
the more
he
tired
was
you
thinking
are,
about
and
other
the more
things
you
in
want
his
to
heart,
sleep, the more
Aizen
troublesome it
Sosuke,
is.
that crazy man. Every time I guess wrong, he deliberately lured Daishu
Chapter
to Soul
10,
Society
51,
and then led
in the
all
dark,
the members
a
to
young man's
reinforce him.
silhouette
In
could be
fact,
clearly
he
seen.
secretly
He was
killed
thin
all the members.
and had silver hair.
I'm afraid
A cold
Ikamaru
wind blew,
Jin is
making
the
his
same.
captain's
Dustless's
Haori
heart
dance
was
in the
clear.
wind.
The
There
word
couldn't be such a
6 could be
coincidence
clearly
in
seen.
this world.
Captain
It's
Ikamaru
probably to
Jin,
continue
why are you
making
here
Hogyoku
so late at night?
After all,
Dustless
that thing needs a
pretended
lot
to
of
be
souls.
surprised.
Dustless's
In fact,
frown
he
relaxed.
knew that Ikamaru
He
Jin
sneered.
would come looking
Aizen
for
probably
Matsumoto
came to
Renanju
pick talented
because
students this
Matsumoto
time,
Jin's childhood
satisfied
sweetheart was
the
Renanju.
Hogyoku's needs.
At this moment,
The stronger the
Ikamaru
person,
Jin's expression
the
wasn't
stronger
as
the soul.
sly as before.
Matsumoto
But his
Renanju,
mouth was still
Hinamori,
raised,
and his
Rukia,
eyes were narrowed.
and many other Shinigami.
His smile wasn't as
They're all
playful as
talented.
before.
Some of them
Instead,
didn't even
it
graduate.
was like a hunter
but their names have
sizing
already
up his
spread
prey
throughout
But now,
Soul Society.
Ikamaru Jin was
Uno
smiling
Wallai and
coldly.
Dustless walked
Dustless
side by
took
side.
Matsumoto
While looking at
Renanju
the
behind his
beautiful
back.
scenery in
It
the
wasn't hard to
distance.
guess what
She explained to
Ikamaru Jin was
Dustless
thinking.
about Soul
I also have
Society's
nothing to
current
do.
situation.
During this period,
Damn, Aizen.
I heard that
I wasn't
Captain
interested in
Wu
those
Chan
students,
found a
but
few
based on the current
talented female
situation,
students.
it doesn't
So
matter
I wanted to pay
if
my
I snatch
respects
a few
to
of them
them
to
in
join the
advance.
7th Division.
Ikamaru Jin
Dustless's
said
lips
calmly,
curled
"There's
into
a problem."
wicked smile.
Dustless
The laziness
raised his
on his
eyebrows.
face
He
disappeared
immediately
and was
noticed
replaced
Ikamaru
by a playful,
Jin's
strange
gloating
behavior.
expression.
Although he hadn't
Matsumoto
offended
Renanju,
Aizen, both
Rukia,
sides were
and Hinamori.
secretly fighting each
They
other.
all sound good.
Sorry,
Especially
Captain
Hinamori
Ikamaru Jin
and Rukia.
might be disappointed.
I heard they're very
already
capable.
asleep. The 7th
Dustless
Division
directly
just so
refused.
happened to laugh.
Dustless
such
felt
capable
that
people.
Ikamaru Jin
After some
wasn't that
contemplation,
simple.
Since he
Wuchin also
pulled
decided to
Matsumoto
recruit a few.
Renanju and the others into the 7th Division, he wouldn't let them be in danger.
Chapter
This cunning
1039.
fox only had
Dustless
Matsumoto
could see
Renanju in his
many
heart.
students
He
coming
was cold to
and
everyone
going
else.
into Shin Shin
It's just a meeting.
Spiritual Academy.
Captain Dustless.
Today was the
You don't have to be
graduation
so
day,
cold.
so
There was a
Ikamaru
lot of
Jin
people coming
touched his
and
chin
going and
the
smiled.
gathering.
He was
of the
also very
heroes.
calm.
Dustless
looked
looked
around
clearly
and
felt
took
that
in
the
all the
surroundings
students.
were
He was
extremely
filled
cold.
with
The
emotions.
humidity was
In the
affected
future,
by Ikamaru
people
Jin's
from all
murderous
walks of life
aura,
would be
and there
cultivating
were signs
in
of
this
freezing.
academy. Speaking
Cold
of
and
which,
heartless.
whereas
Dustless
Aizen
repeated
Narasuk.
Ikamaru Jin's
Dustless looked
words.
around for
He
traces
said coldly,
of Aizen Narasuk.
Captain Ikamaru
This kid
Jin,
suddenly disappeared.
what do you
from
think
the
will
world,
happen if you put a
and his
sinister
Ryatsu
snake in a
disappeared
sheep
along
pen?
with Jin.
Of course,
Ikamaru
warned
Jin
you.
didn't even
Have you
think
thought about
it.
which team you
He
want to
stared
join?
at the faint smile
The delicate
on
and soft
Dustless's
laughter
face
attracted
and realized
Wu Chen's
that
attention.
Dustless was
He turned his
implying
head
something.
and looked at the
That
source.
sinister snake. There
was
were two young
obviously
girls wearing
cursing him.
death.
I didn't
Overlord
expect
costumes.
Captain Dustless
Their
to be
facial
so
features were
good
as
at
white
talking.
as snow.
Ikamaru
Their
Jin's
appearances
expression
were excellent.
changed a little bit.
Their bell-like
Then he opened his
smiles were
eyes
intoxicating.
and looked at the
Most
7th
importantly,
Division's captain's
Dustless
office.
knew both of
Then
them.
he turned around
around.
The golden-haired
and
girl had beautiful
quick?
and
That's
long
impossible.
curly hair.
How could he leave
Her
without
collar
seeing
revealed her majestic
Matsumoto
snowy
Rendezvous?
peaks. Looking
Her
at Jin's
crystal
back,
eyes were bright
Dustless pondered
and full
over
of
his
vigor.
motive.
She looked like an
Matsumoto
orchid in a
Jin.
secluded valley.
Of course,
She was
Matsumoto
very
Renange
elegant.
Matsumoto
Be
Matsumoto.
I should be right.
Matsumoto
Dustless said with
Matsumoto
certainty as he stared at her body.
Sharp eyes
Because of his
insistently
abnormal
looking
vision
at him.
Dustless
Staring
could even see the
was
pink on her
isocystic.
snowy peaks.
Jin was sharp,
Of
sharp,
course,
sharp, sharp.
normal
Jin
people
looking.
wouldn't be able to see it.
Looking up, after
He
all,
saw a huge
Dustless's
white light
dojutsu
coming at him.
and vision,
Of course,
too powerful.
there was also the sound.
The girl
of a
next to
fatal attack.
Matsumoto, Renanju.
Shoot him, Shinigami.
The girl next to Matsumoto, Renanju, had short black hair and dark purple
The cold
eyes.
light
She was
flashed
petite
rapidly.
and petite.
Because it was too
Without a doubt,
sharp,
this
people
girl
didn't
was
dare to
Rukia
open their
Kuroki.
eyes.
It
God is
extended
good to
without
me,
limit,
giving me a
and
pillow
almost
when I'm
pierced
sleepy.
through Wu
Wu
Chun
Chun
said
said
with
with
a
an
smile
eye.
with bright eyes.
That's all you got.
He sighed that
Ikamaru
God
Jin
gave him
said to
face.
himself.
Then, as he put away
stepped
his
forward and
Zanpakuto,
greeted them with a smile.
just like being melted
When he was
by
about
the
to strike up a
divine
conversation
spear,
with them,
Dustless's
the two girls
entire person
unexpectedly
vanished
spoke
without a
first.
trace.
Please move.
You're right,
Captain
I heard that your
Dustless.
Zanpakuto
The one who
is
spoke
very
was the hot
strong,
Matsumoto
but it seems that it's all
Ranju.
you got.
Her face was
Thousands of
stern
fireflies
as if she saw
swept
Jake's,
across
Dustless
the
was
pitch-black
embarrassed.
sky. In her
flash,
tone was filled
it was
with
as
disgust.
bright as day.
What's going
Gathering
on?
behind
Why do I always get
Ikamaru
shot
Jin,
when I'm lying
Dustless,
down recently?
who had a cold
Seeing
expression,
this,
mercilessly
was
sent out
directly
a small
petrified.
foot covered in
A while ago, he had offended Zero Squad
Kakaka.
because of the
The
masked
wall
legion,
100 meters
and
away
now
cracked.
He had
And
inexplicably
Ikamaru Jin
offended
was
this
stuck in
girl.
it.
However,
The corner of his
this
mouth
kind of normal
twitched,
attack,
and he could
couldn't
not
do any
help but
damage
ask
to him.
curiously.
He was almost unharmed.
This should be the first time we've
No
met.
wonder Aizen
right?
let Jin
That's
stay
right.
by his side,
Matsumoto,
even though he knew
Ranju
that he was
nodded.
up to no good.
Her tone was
I
still
thought he was
cold,
just a passerby,
which made Dustless
now it seems that I was
speechless.
wrong. As soon
All
as
right,
he
it
said
might be
that,
because of that
another
brat
powerful
Ikamaru.
attack came.
I've been
Since it
causing
was
him a lot of
Ikamaru
trouble.
Jin who attacked
Dustless
first,
didn't know whether to
Dustless
laugh or
didn't
cry.
hold back.
The relationships
Bansho
in
Tensei,
Soul Society
he raised
were
his
so
hand
complicated.
and an endless gravitational
Sometimes if you
force
offended one
covered
person
because
Ikamaru,
that person's
Jin's
relationship was
body,
too great,
he started to float,
you would end up
uncontrollably.
offending a group of people.
You took the initiative.
You must
to
be
close
Rukia the
distance
Rotten
with me.
wood.
Stupid.
Do you know
Seeing
what ability
Matsumoto
my Zanpakuto
Ranju's
has?
cold face,
Sensing the
Dustless
gravitational
also
force
changed the topic,
covering his body.
He looked at Rukia
Ikamaru
with a
Jin's
smile and
got
said
bigger.
very gently.
He didn't resist.
I have a good
Instead,
relationship with your
he
brother,
rushed at him
brother-in-law
at an even
by
faster
Kia.
speed.
If you have time,
in the blink of
you
an
can come to
eye,
my 7th
the
squad to
Zanpakuto
play.
fell from the sky.
Dustless forced a smile.
You're the stupid one.
When it came
Captain
to acting,
Ikamaru
he knew
Jin,
that he was not as
staring
good
at the falling
as Aizen
cold
Sosuke.
light without changing his
Impossible.
expression.
You're
Wu Chun
definitely
opened
lying
his
to me.
hands.
Everyone
and a
in the guiding
repulsive force
force
that was
doesn't
diametrically
care about my
opposite
sworn brother.
to gravity,
And he doesn't care
erupted.
about the other
Shinra
captains
Tensei.
either.
How
Just
could he know
as
you?
Dustless was about to be cut
blinked
in
her
half,
eyes and
the
questioned.
repulsive force
Even
came out of
Zanpakuto
nowhere.
on her waist
Ikamaru
was
Jin's
unsheathed.
smile froze.
She probably thought that
and an
Dustless
unstoppable
was a liar.
force forced him back.
What's the matter with these
Caught
two
off
brats?
guard. The
Ikamaru
corners of
Jin
Wu
was
Chen's
sent
mouth
flying again.
twitched when he heard
I just
this,
stole your childhood friend.
and he was
I
exceptionally
just pulled
depressed.
Matsumoto
He immediately
Renenka
stared at
into the
Matsumoto
7th Division.
Ranju.
I'm not even
Rukia,
marrying her,
and made up his
Why
mind.
are you so agitated?
Although the two of you
Even
are
though
very
Ikamaru
strong
Jin
and
covered
covered
up
up
perfectly,
perfectly,
Dustless
you
could
are
still
ordinary.
see what
The
he
two's
was
face
really
changed,
thinking.
and they
His
nodded
childhood friend
undeniably.
was stolen
They were
by
geniuses
Dustless.
in the academy.
He was
From
heartbroken.
the Godii 13, they were ordinary. He, seeing that the two girls were fooled, Dustless continued
Chapter
to tempt them.
1052.
The members of the 7th
Dustless
Squad
scolded Jin
all
for
died
being
a
so
few days
narrow-minded.
ago. If
I
you
just
were
stole
willing
your
to join the
childhood
7th
sweetheart.
Squad, I didn't
can
kill your
teach
parents.
you.
Your
Why are you
strength
acting
will
like you
increase
hate me
by
so
leaps and
much?
bounds.
Leave if you know what's good for
Matsumoto
you.
Ranju
I can treat
and
it
Rukia
as if nothing
looked at each
happened.
other.
There
and their
won't be
eyes were
anyone
wide
gossiping
open.
at the head
You still want to
captain's
fight with
place.
me? Dustless
Wu
was
Chun
proud.
assured.
Jin
Strength
stood up.
was
His
the
eyes
weakness
didn't wave
of
at
her.
two girls.
Obviously, he didn't
Becoming
care about
stronger was the
Dustless's
biggest
words.
wish of
This kid is
every
willing to do
Shinigami,
anything for
and
Matsumoto
Rukia and
Ranju.
Matsumoto.
I remember that he was
Ranju
lurking
were no
around
exception.
Sosuke,
Kachiki,
Aizen to avenge
Byakuya,
Matsumoto
and Rukia
Ranju.
rarely talked to
Dustless
each other,
said with a
but
hint
alone taught
of
her.
admiration.
Ikamaru
Leave?
Jin and Matsumoto
I'm not the kind of person who
Ranju
knows what's good for
rarely
him.
talk to each other.
Ikamaru Jin
in order to avoid
refused
arousing
without
Aizen's
hesitation
suspicion,
as he raised his
Ikamaru
Zanpakuto.
Jin and
Wiping the
Matsumoto
blood from his
Ranju
mouth,
only
Jin
said
said
a few times.
beating up a captain.
Therefore,
It's not a
Dustless
small
was
matter
100% sure that he could get
to the head
two
captain.
girls.
Captain
Are you
Jin,
sure you're not lying
don't
to
you
us?
think you're ridiculous?
That you will teach us
The head
personally?
captain doesn't have time to deal
Matsumoto
with this kind of
Ranjuku's
trivial
stance
matter.
began to waver.
Dustless couldn't help
She pursed
but
her red
despise
lips
him
and looked
when he
at
was about to
Dustless
pounce
with a
on
cute
Jin.
expression.
A black
That's for
shadow
sure.
blocked his
I'm a
way.
person who never
His
lies.
face was very
I've already
gentle.
reached the peak.
He had
of
a smile on his
Shinigami's
face.
Cutting
He was
fist,
wearing glasses.
demon walk.
He looked like a gentleman.
Dustless said
his body
cheerfully.
exuded
His words
a strong,
seemed to be filled
scholarly
with
aura.
magic.
The
His
first
every
impression he
move
gave was that
and
he
the
was
slightest
elegant,
choice of
calm,
words pulled the
and calm.
two girls' nerves.
Captain Aizen,
Just as he
what
was
do you
about
want?
to use the
Dustless
great
glanced
deceiving
at
finger
Sosuke
technique to
Aizen
break through the
and
last
asked him
line of
differently.
defense of the two
In the
girls.
Godii,
A loud rumble
Dustless hated
sounded
him
in
the
the
most.
sky, and no one would be able to accept this person who was everywhere and thought himself
Chapter
to be the
1040.
smartest.
Boom,
Two
boom,
captains
boom.
dueling
In
in
the
the
cloudless sky.
This is not in
There was an
accordance with the rules
ear-piercing
of Soul
roar,
Society.
followed by a cautious Kosuke
sound.
Aizen
A
touched his
long and
eyes
narrow
and
hole
smiled
appeared in
gently.
the void.
If Dustless
followed by a
didn't know about his
heart-wrenching
dark
roar.
history,
It
he might have
alarmed
been
the
fooled.
entire Soul
Captain Aizen,
Society.
you should
and
say
all
this
the
to Captain
Shinigami
Jin.
realized that
Pointing
something
at
was
Ikamaru
wrong.
Silver,
This
who was
is
holding
it's
a dagger
greater
in his
void.
hand.
After
Wuchen
a while,
acted as if it was
a few
none of his
black
business.
shadows stepped
Captain
out of the
Dustless,
black hole.
you're
and the
treating me
appearance
like an
of Jillian
outsider.
made
I just
the
want to meet the
Shinigami
members
Academy
of the 7th
below
Division.
the Shinigami
Why do you have to stop
Academy
me?
fearful?
Ikamaru
Even if it
Jin
was the
regained
lowest
his
level
sly
Jillian.
smile. It would take
His
a
smile was
vice-captain-level
extremely
Shinigami to deal
Sorry,
with it.
they don't want to
For
see
these
you.
students,
After
it was
that,
a godlike
Dustless
opponent.
entered the team
Roar,
house
roar, roar.
without turning around.
Jillian's
As for
horrifying
Jin
roar
and
came out of his
Sosuke
mouth.
Aizen,
He
and the crisp
directly
sound
ignored
was like
them,
bones
treating
being
them as
crushed.
air.
Many of the
Waxy
weaker
Aizen Sosuke
students
raised his
fainted
head
while
and gave
foaming at the
Ikamaru
mouth.
Jin a
So
cryptic
far,
look. These
Ikamaru
students haven't
Jin
really
nodded and
fought
attacked.
with a greater voice.
You don't know what's good
Look
for
at
you.
this
I
guy.
don't want to
What
take
is
you
that?
seriously.
It's so scary.
Noticing the
It's
dark
hard for me
shadow
to
behind
breathe.
him, the teachers of the
Dustless's
Shinigami
killing
Academy
intent rose.
seemed to have said
An absurd
that this is
idea
a greater
suddenly
void
popped up
called
in his mind.
Jillian. He couldn't
That's
wait to go
void
back
flash.
and ravage
Bastard,
Matsumoto
run
Ranjiku. This
in
is not
various
something that
ways.
rookies like us
When did
can
I become
handle.
like this?
The Shinigami
Dustless
Academy
shook his head,
which
and
was
tried to
full of
wake himself
geniuses,
up.
played
He didn't
out
know
an
whether to laugh or
unprecedented
cry.
funny scene. At the same
A group
time,
of Shinigami
Jin was
threw
closing
away
in
their
on shallow
Dustless
fighting. He was
and
about to
ran
chop
away.
off
Their
Dustless's
running
head.
speed was
Clang,
comparable
clang,
to the
clang.
Shinigami Shuimpa.
This group of useless
At the critical
guys,
moment,
each
Aizen
one
rushed
rushed faster
over
than the
and
other
blocked
one
the
running
attack
for
for
their
Dustless.
Matsumoto
and kicked
Ranjiku
Ranjiku
saw
back
this,
and
Captain
scolded
Jin
secretly.
were colleagues.
Usually,
We can talk
they were
things out.
bragging.
There's no
But
need
now
to
they
kill.
were running faster
Sosuke
than the other.
Aizen said
The Rottenwood
with a pained
Rukia
expression.
was still
Get
standing
out of my
in the
way
far
if you don't want
east,
to get hurt.
but her hair
or
was
else.
wet.
Jin
was
said
nervous.
coldly, and her
Impossible.
hands that were holding the
Sosuke,
Zanpakuto
Aizen
were
said
trembling.
firmly.
The
If
fear
you
in her
wanna hurt
eyes was
Dustless,
hard to hide.
you'll have to step over
and
my dead
Matsumoto
body.
Ranjiku
What are these
was
two
no
idiots
exception.
doing?
Your
Wuchin,
courage is
who was about to
commendable,
step into the
but your
7th
behavior
division,
is too
stopped
stupid
and retracted
This level
his
of fighting
footsteps.
is not
He put his
suitable
hands in
for
his
you
wide
two.
sleeves
Run
and
for
looked
your
at the
lives.
scene in front of
Looking
him
up at the
with
greater
interest.
void in the sky.
Although I know Sosuke,
Dustless was
Aizen,
puzzled.
and Jin are doing
It was
this on
too
purpose.
strange to
What's their
invade.
goal?
We are about to
Dustless
join the
sat down
Shinigami.
casually.
How can we
He
run?
didn't feel sleepy at all.
Matsumoto
He looked at the
Ranjiku
strange
said
battle
stubbornly,
in front of him.
holding the Zanpakuto
Aizen was probably the
tightly,
one who arranged
and looked at the
this.
Jillians
Clang,
in the
clang,
sky.
clang.
Boom, boom,
Without
boom.
waiting for Dustless
Destructive
to come up with an
fluctuations
explanation,
covered the sky.
Ikamaru Jin
and a deep
and
red
Aizen
halo
Sosuke
died. The
broke
entire
out in a
true
fierce
central
battle.
spiritual
Their
art
Zanpakuto
Academy red.
collided with each
Several
other.
Jillian
Boom,
opened their
boom, boom.
mouths and
In the
released
dark
void
night
sky
sky
at the same time.
The deafening collision
He-
of the Zanpakuto
Although I don't know what's going on,
continued,
this kind of occasion
and the spark
is
from the
pretty
friction
good.
of a Zanpakuto
Dustless's lips
didn't
curled
stop.
into a smile
Ikamaru
as
Jin
he
and
glanced at the
Aizen
surrounding
Sosuke were
students in the
sweating
corner of his
profusely.
eyes.
This
Pucci,
sudden drama,
after a few
the
breaths,
hero saving the
temporary
damsel in
victor was
distress,
decided.
was
A
not
bloody
bad at all.
wound was left
Whoosh,
on
whoosh, whoosh.
Aizen Yusuk's body.
Several
But
world-destroying
Jin
void
easily
flashes
sent him
rumbled
flying
down
kick,
and
he was
locked
pushed
onto their
back 100
targets,
meters,
which were the
Captain
extremely
Jin,
conspicuous
you're very strong.
Matsumoto.
It seems that I
Ranjiku,
can't defeat
and
you
Rukia
without using
Almost
my Zanpakuto.
everyone from the surrounding academy
Sosuke,
had fled.
Aizen raised
Only
his
Dustless
Zanpakuto,
and a few others
no
were left.
wonder Jin provoked me, and
Just
Aizen took
Jillian
the opportunity
trying to strike a
to
stone
stop
with
the
an
fight.
egg.
It turned
You
out to
overestimate
be
yourself.
I thought you two
The
had
spiritual
prepared some kind of
pressure in his
script,
body
but it turned out
surged.
to be so
Dustless calmly
ugly
closed
and
his
vulgar.
eyes.
Suddenly,
Dustless looked
he
at
was
Aizen
startled
with
to
disdain.
find that the corners
I guess
of
you
his
want to find a
clothes were
suitable
grabbed by
opportunity
someone.
to let me
Looking
see
up,
Aizen
he saw that it was
use
actually
Kyokusujetsu
Matsumoto Ranju.
Unfortunately,
and Shimurukia.
you're doomed to fail.
That doesn't seem right. Knowing
This
Aizen
seems to have been
Sosuke's
deliberately
intention,
arranged.
Dustless did. Dustless
as he
had a
wished.
strange
His
expression.
two dark
on his face.
eyes locked on
He had a feeling that this
Kyokusujetsu
situation was
and observed
deliberately
the
arranged
slender
by someone.
Zanpakuto
It was
blade.
obviously a scene
Dustless
of a hero
can't wait to be
saving
hit by
a damsel
Kyoka
in
Sujetsu.
distress.
Anyway,
It was just
it
that the
doesn't hurt him.
protagonist had
He only needs to
somehow
use
been
armament
replaced by
hockey
Dustless.
when fighting.
It's
And
coming. Aizen can also
Matsumoto
reduce the
Ranjiku
attention on him.
said in horror.
He can even use
She looked up
Kyokusujetsu
and saw that the
when
void
Aizen's
flash had
confident.
already landed on her head.
Seeing that the void flash was about to destroy the three of them, Rukia
Chapter
and Matsumoto
1053.
Ranjiku
Dustless
closed their
stared at
eyes in
Aizen,
despair,
or rather,
and
Zanpakuto
quietly waited for death.
in
to
Soul
come.
Society.
It was also
at
the
this
person that
moment
Aizen
that
was
an
most worried
incomparably
about was
ferocious,
undoubtedly
repulsive
Dustless.
force erupted.
Strength was
Shinra
one thing,
Tensei.
but the
A
bigger
perfect
reason was that
360
Dustless hadn't
degree
seen the
defensive
release
circle
of
was
Kyokusujetsu
instantly formed.
On a
And the
whim,
void flash
Aizen
was
teamed up
easily
with
repelled.
Ikamaru Jin, attacking
to
my
test
cute
this
teammates.
conspiracy.
You bunch
Idiot.
of Jillian,
I'll say
you're really
goodbye
not
from now
giving
on.
me any face.
Seeing Dustless
Vigorous
staring at his
spiritual
Zanpakuto
pressure
curiously
surged all
Aizen's
over his
smiled.
body.
A
Although the
bright
flash
captives
of
of Soul
light
Society
converged
were
on
all
Dustless's
colleagues,
arm,
in a sense,
and continued
they
to
were also
expand.
competitors.
It gradually
Everyone
engulfed
wanted to know each
Dustless's
other's
entire
Zanpakuto
palm
and their abilities.
Hato's
91st thousand hands bright sky.
Do you think your
cannon.
Kyoka,
The huge light beam
ability,
turned
is
into
invincible?
scattered flashes
He's as
of
innocent
light.
as a kid.
Each side of the light
on the
beam
surface
was
he
far
looked like a
sharper
curious
than a blade,
baby, and
but in
more
his heart,
blazing than a flame.
Wu-chan
All of
sneered.
them
In this
ruthlessly
world,
bombarded
the only
the
thing that
Jillian.
could make Dustless
Boom, boom,
wary
boom.
was
In the blink of
Yawatch's
an eye,
heaven-defying
groups of
ability.
Jillian were
Although the
turned into
catoptric
ashes.
deflection
They were
was
blasted
powerful
all over
and
the sky.
heaven-defying
Because too many
They had
Jillian
little
were blasted
effect
to death
on Dustless.
A series of
It
explosions
didn't even have any
could be
effect
heard in the sky
as long as he closed his
so
eyes
powerful.
and used
The two
Kenbuchi
women
Kahaki.
choked
and
looked
at the dismembered Jillian
only
in
absolute
the sky.
strength.
They didn't
could be
even
relied
notice
on.
that their saliva
After a while,
was overflowing.
Sosuke,
They
Aizen
looked at
released
Dustless
his
with
Zampakudo,
worship, and Jin
Kato's
Ikamaru
63
stopped fighting
thunder
and
roar
left without
cannon.
saying a word.
A flash of light
not even
bloomed,
bothering to explain.
and the Jillian along
Perhaps
the way
in
suddenly
Sosuke
collapsed.
Aizen's eyes,
The golden
anyone
light
who saw
was
Kyoka
unstoppable.
Sujutsu
It spread for
Shurikai
10 miles
was no longer
and annihilated
qualified to
all
be
the
his
Jillian
opponent.
like
They were nothing
skewers.
more than pawns.
Then Captain
Aizen,
wearing Captain Teori, made a
Kazuk's
high-profile
half
appearance.
Hogyoku.
Bastard,
Shouldn't we take
how
the
can this be?
opportunity to snatch
Aizen
it?
cursed in his heart.
Ikamaru Jin
He looked
took
at
a deep look
Matsumoto
the 7th
Ranjiku
Division's
and
house,
Rukia,
with
as if he
worship
was
in
looking
their
for
eyes.
Matsumoto
He was the one who
Ranjiku.
wrote the
He
script
turned
of
to
Aizen
Aizen
and
saving the
asked,
damsel.
"There's
in
no need to
distress.
draw legs on
His
snake.
purpose was
He's
to
already
save
immersed
this
in
group of people
Sujutsu
at the critical moment.
And don't you think
Their
it's a
souls
good
were
thing
good,
that Hogyoku
suitable
is
for
in his hands?
Hogyoku material.
So he needed to join the 5th
Aizen
Division.
analyzed
But who would have
wisely.
thought that
It would be
Dustless
best
would
if he
play
can create
such a trick?
Hogyoku.
Then we can take advantage of the situation. Aizen smirked.
Chapter
Even if he can't
1041.
create a perfect
Sosuke,
Hogyoku,
Aizen wanted to cry,
he'll lose
but
his
had
value.
no tears.
Although it wasn't
His
explicitly
painstaking plan
stated,
had gone down
the
the
meaning
drain,
was self-evident.
and instead,
A person
it
who
had
had lost
helped
his value
Dustless.
could only
Seeing
die
Matsumoto
in the end.
Ranjiku,
But he's
and
very
Rukia's
strong,
admiring eyes,
unimaginably
he was
strong.
furious.
According
If you
to
want to
news
worship someone,
from Waco Mundo,
you should worship yourself.
Even Vasto Lord
not Wu
couldn't
Chun.
withstand
Dustless
a single blow
grinned.
from him.
He understood
Ikamaru Jin
Aizen's
reminded.
intentions.
He had heard of Dustless
Great boy
sweeping,
took the
through
opportunity to
Waco
enter the
Mundo.
academy
At that
and waited
time,
for
Squad
Matsumoto.
Zero had also been
Rukia,
tricked by Dustless
and the others to despair.
There's no doubt that
Then
the man is
Aizen
very
and
strong.
Sosuke,
If it's a
Aizen
one-on-one
stepped
fight,
forward.
I'm not his
How
opponent.
despicable.
I'm afraid the
Dustless
only one in
pointed his
Soul
middle
Society
finger at
who can
Sosuke
suppress
Aizen
him is
Then
the
he
head
chuckled.
captain. In the
Aizen
end,
didn't want to give up.
Aizen was the one
But at
who
the same
got away
time,
with it. He admired
Captain
Dustless.
Aizen's face doesn't
Dustless
look
had
so
only
good.
been a Shinigami
Dustless
for a year,
walked up to Sosuke
but he had achieved
Aizen
more than
and
he
teased
had
him.
in hundreds of years.
Sosuke Aizen's
But have you
expression
forgotten that the
turned
biggest
gloomy.
advantage of
He
my
suppressed the
mirror's
anger in
image
his heart
is not to
and
confuse
asked
the
in a
enemy.
low voice.
Aizen
Captain
said proudly
Dustless has
and
been in the
confident.
7th Division recently.
Why did you suddenly come out?
If a one-on-one
In fact,
fight
due to the
doesn't
overly
work,
horrifying
then I'll
sound,
use mirror's
it gave
image
people
to
the command the
illusion
power
of
of the
a poisonous
entire Soul
snake
Society
hissing
to deal with
in
that
his
man.
hand.
Although
Wu
he
Chun
trusted the
smiled
ability
and took it as a
mirror's
child,
image,
venting his
very
dissatisfaction.
much.
Aizen
He
liked to
said
be
calmly,
prepared for everything.
The members of the
His
7th
success
Division
today
were all
has a
killed
lot
by the
to
traitor.
do with his
Now,
meticulous mind.
the head captain
who told
wanted
the
me to
idiots
choose
of Godii,
outstanding
13 to
students from
listen
the
to
true
the orders
Central
of
Spiritual
Central
46. It's a
These
pity
two will
that
be my
such a
new
good
members.
chess piece
Pointing at
didn't
Matsumoto
squeeze
Ranju
out the
and
last bit
Rukia,
of its value.
Wu Chun chuckled
Don't you think
and
so,
said,
Jin?
Hearing
Yes, Captain
this,
Aizen.
Matsumoto
Idiot.
Ranjiku
Looking at
and
the
Rukia
disappearing
looked at each
backs
other
of
speechlessly.
Ikamaru Jin,
Although
and
they were
Aizen,
tempted, they still
Dustless
hadn't
sneered.
agreed to
Aizen's
let Wu Chun
mirror's
join the
image
7th
can
Division.
hypnotize the
After
five
thinking for a
senses,
while,
but the observation
Matsumoto
haki
Ranjiku
is
was about to
outside the
reject
five
Dustless.
senses.
The
But her
chance of
mouth was
Aizen
blocked
defeating
in
him with this
advance.
ability,
These
is
two
zero.
members of my team,
Even the
are
conversation
talented
between
and
Aizen
hardworking.
and Ikamaru
Anyway,
Jin,
the
was
7th
heard
Division
clearly
has
by
nothing to
Dustless.
do now.
What a
If I
blatant
teach
plan.
them step by step,
He should be waking
they
up
will
soon,
definitely improve.
looking
by
down
leaps
at the
and
blue
bounds.
round bead. in his
Matsumoto
hand.
stopped.
Dustless
She planned to join the
Godii.
Godii.
The
13
mysterious black
after graduation
and purple
anyway.
light
She wanted to join
magical
Ikamaru
power,
Jin's
penetrating
division,
a
but
faint
he rejected
purple
her.
mist.
Now it
If you
seems
perceive
that
it
joining
carefully,
Dustless,
you will be
7th
surprised to
Division
find
is
that it's
not
a
a bad
very
idea.
dense, materialized
Aizen smiled
Ryatsu.
reluctantly.
The bead
but he
in his
still
hand
raised his hand
is the
and
Hogyoku.
congratulated.
Aizen,
Congratulations,
you don't deserve to
Captain
have the
Dustless,
Hogyoku.
for finding
It would be
two
impolite
good
for me
teammates.
to accept it on your behalf.
Congratulations.
Feeling
Although
the
he
cool
said that,
touch of the Hogyoku,
Aizen's heart was
Dustless
filled with
raised the
resentment.
corner of his mouth.
The materials
his
he
face was
painstakingly
full of
gathered
satisfaction.
for Hogyoku
And, of
were taken
course,
away
a
by
touch of
Dustless.
disappointment. Getting the
Kakaka
Hogyoku is indeed
right at this
something to
time.
be happy about.
The sound of
but
ruins
so far,
collapsing
Dustless's
attracted
Zampakudo
Dustless's attention.
hasn't moved at all.
Immediately
As a
after,
Shinigami,
a young
Dustless
girl
is
covered in
embarrassed
dirt
that he
came
doesn't
into
have a
view.
Zampakudo.
Isn't this Hinamori?
Zaraki Kenpachi
Dustless was
is
surprised
stronger
and
than him,
instinctively looked at
and he has a
Sosuke
Zampakudo.
Now, Dustless can only use
since
the
it's delivered to my
first Hogyoku.
doorstep.
Forget
I'll
it.
just accept
Since
it.
Aizen used
Now,
the ability,
the 5th Division was the
mirror's
same
image
as
on me.
Dustless's
It means that
7th Division.
Aizen should be doing
They were
something
all
in the
killed
near
by
future.
Aizen.
The stronger
After
the
thinking
Shinigami,
about it, Dustless
the
felt
easier it
relieved.
was for Aizen
He
to
can't
trick them
force
into
the
going to the operating
Zampakudo,
table.
and he can't force
Hinamori.
it.
What's more, according to Dustless's
talent
current
isn't
strength.
bad.
She's a
Obtaining
good
the
material for
Hogyoku
Hogyoku
is like adding wings
Aizen
to a
thought
tiger,
viciously,
and his Zanpakuto
but he still had a
is
warm
actually
smile on his
dispensable.
face. He looked like a big brother next door who cared about everything. Thinking about this, Aizen immediately came up with a perfect trap. Time flew
Just as he was
by,
about to capture
and in the blink of an
Hinamori,
eye,
an
5
accident
months had
occurred.
passed. Perhaps because of the different concept of golden light swooped 5 months, and Dustless, only standing next to Sosuke Aizen, instantly appeared next to Hinamori and said something that made the Hogyoku also cooked duck was swallowed by Dustless. Why don't I feel anything? Young girl. Dustless was 7th Division, looking at the outstanding genius in the center. Dustless looked at Hinamori with bright eyes blue and said, I have heard about your excellent Dustless had implanted the Hogyoku this time into his body. I came all the way here just for you. There was not even a fart reaction, anything, let alone she just looked at Dustless. Definitely no feeling. Being looked at by those eyes that seemed to see. I will provide you with power. She was when your life is oppressed. Thousands of miles. When you fear death, Sosuke you can evolve. Ranjika Matsumoto, the surface of the Hogyoku and flashed a mysterious halo. The academy wasn't far from a strange voice suddenly, but it was within Dustless's mind. Traveling thousands of miles consciousness of the Hogyoku. Definitely nonsense. Hearing this, I will teach you the fighting techniques of the Shinigami. The Hogyoku, your strength will increase by leaps and bounds. But to his surprise, and in the future, clear voice was you will be able to become from a 15 or 16 Dustless's words made very clear and a little dizzy. Only by Godei 13 can I evolve. There had never been a captain who would give up his dignity. He may not be able to evolve initiative to teach a member. There seems to be no one in this world nor the leisure feel fear. Seeing Hinamori's only when the host is afraid of death, thought quickly and wants to get stronger. If you didn't pull her over, can you evolve? She would definitely the consciousness of the Hogyoku confirms. Only by fear you should know the two can I evolve. Pointing at this Ranjika Matsumoto and Rukia Matsumoto. Dustless couldn't help Dustless but feel decisively said. He can only pin his hope now members of the 7th Division, hoping that he can bring and it won't be long before but it doesn't matter. To vice it's also very good after seeing Ranjika Matsumoto and Rukia Dustless showed a smile. Hinamori immediately said loudly, "In this way, Luanji, your Hogyoku project bring my captain's indefinitely. I'm going to be late for glancing the captain's meeting. That old man is really bored. Creating Hogyoku required a thinking of old man Yamamoto and Sosuke. Dustless couldn't Aizen wanted these young students because the 7th Division needs to increase the members. At least a few nannies to wait on you." Chapter Matsumoto Ranjika Aizen looked at Dustless with satisfaction. Hiding she threw Captain Haori to Dustless and immediately fell. They should be here soon. Dustless looking up at the sky. Gulp. Aizen's lips awkwardly took a sinister smile and looked at after giving Dustless a deep look. Voluptuous body. Matsumoto Ranjika Aizen was just wearing simple. He didn't care if he lost him, which couldn't hide. He gave up so easily at all. Dustless, moreover, turned his head to look at Aizen's clothes very strange and asked in everything seemed to be transparent. So simple. Get up. Strange. Dustless nudged Dustless began to think about Aizen's purpose. But she obviously didn't. It was impossible for him to give up on making her body was filled with the smell of alcohol. Aizen was very ambitious. She drank again last night. Wanted to become a god. Seeing this while he was thinking, Dustless was particularly several figures surrounded Hinamori and Rukia were really good. Where are the other members in an orderly division? Matsumoto and Matsumoto, on the other hand, rushed nothing but a draft in unison. Dustless, since it was their first time here, was that this guy had to interact with the other members so that they could take care of each other. A black butterfly suddenly stopped beside the ship, shook his head, attracted Dustless's attention. There are no other members in the 7th Division. All of them died. Butterfly, only you, frowning, and Rukia. Dustless quickly put on his clothes she also and rushed to the Dustless pointed at Hinamori in the 1st Division's building. The captains were gathered. When the three of them heard the atmosphere was tense. Their bodies almost couldn't support themselves. Give this old man an explanation. They looked angry, rebuke and exploded. And everyone had previously boasted a deluge because of Aizen's Hogyoku. Who would have thought that there were only a few of them kept disappearing in Rukuin Street? Each division of the Godei, the number of students in the academy at least 100 decreased greatly. Why do we only have Yamamoto began to blame including the captain as the captain of the 12th Division? Matsumoto he was responsible for monitoring Soul Society. It's not a big deal. One cooks, naturally. One cleans. He blamed Mayuri for the inexplicable disappearance Isn't it suitable? Dustless it's hard to guard against the 7th Division's mission was the prison team. This old man, but there weren't any prisoners in Soul Society. With Aizen Sosuke helping, if there were, Dustless would have find out who did it. Hinamori, looking at Mayuri with pity, and Rukia looked at each other. There was no need to guess Dustless's words. Only one person he wasn't looking for members. He was looking for a babysitter. This Kakaka. Mayuri's face suddenly black. There was a cracking sound in the sky, but he didn't dare. And then the void seemed to be. He didn't know who did it. Revealing the head captain would kill him if he spoke nonsense. Groups of Jillian walked out from within. He took out a bunch of useful information. Aizen left early, hoping that the head captain probably left to hunt other Shinigami. It seems to be this guy, without a doubt. Mayuri, the more chaotic Soul Society and said with a headache, the more Aizen I don't know what kind of monster this guy is, but he doesn't look like a large number of souls, and he doesn't look like a Hogyoku. Anyway, even if a daimyo soul disappeared, boundless. They would suspect that they were killed, investigate, and eaten by Jillian, but they were all killed by the 7th Division. It turned out to be
nothing
him.
to do
His
with
pupils
us.
shrank.
Both of his hands
Witnessing
were
the voice of the
inserted
mysterious
into the wide
monster in the
sleeves.
photo,
Wu Chen's
bored
spiritual
eyes
pressure
flashed
was
a bright
completely
light,
extinguished,
and his expression
turned
was
and
also
left.
very
The
surprised.
three girls looked at each other.
No wonder
and
Mayuri's people were
Matsumoto
killed.
frowned.
This
The
monster
daimyo
is
is
right
really
in front of
strong.
us.
Dustless
Are we going to be
showed
deserters?
an interested expression.
He thought that
Although
Aizen would need
Rukia
a few
and
years to
Hinamori
create the
didn't
monster in
say
the photos,
anything,
but
they
now
had
it's
already
out of the blue.
unsheathed
The monster in the picture
Zanpakuto
could be
and
called
quietly
a greater
made their
void,
stance clear.
but its void hole
This
was
is not our
blocked,
business,
and it was wearing a
It's
mask.
the mission of the
There
other
were two
divisions.
bone horns on its
Besides,
forehead, which
the
were
three of you
extremely
are just
sharp.
cannon fodder.
Its entire
You won't be
body
able to
was
do
pitch
anything.
black.
Dustless
And it looked
ignored
very
Matsumoto's
mysterious.
words and said mercilessly, "With your current strength, you can only face ordinary void
Chapter
fragmentation
1055.
realm bastards."
Dustless was speechless.
Jillian isn't something
The
you
captains
can touch.
discussed among
Retreat.
themselves.
Boom, boom,
This was the
boom.
first time they
At the
saw
same time,
such a strange
the
creature.
ground shook
What is this?
violently.
After
rolling
a while,
up a huge
the head
cloud
captain
of dust.
muttered in confusion.
See,
His
the
eyes were
qualified
filled with
fighters I mentioned
curiosity
are here.
as he looked
Dustless
at Mayuri.
chuckled.
This was
and
his
looked at the
specialty.
sky in the north.
However,
he
the
saw
head captain was
Zaraki
going to be disappointed
Kenpachi carrying
this
his Zanpakuto
Mayuri shrugged
and leading a large
helplessly
group
with
of
a blank
Shinigami.
expression.
The ferocious
This was the first
formation
time he had
made
seen
the sky
such a
dim,
strange thing.
and the whole world
I remember
was
this void
immersed
is called
in the
void
aura
white
of the 11th
It's a void
division.
created from the
Look
soul
at the other
of a
divisions
Shinigami,
and then look at
it's
us.
very strong.
Matsumoto
I think it's on the
rolled her
same
eyes
level
at
as
Dustless
Vasto Lord
and said,
maybe even
"Why are
stronger.
you so anxious?
Compared to the
This is not our
captains who
duty.
didn't know,
There's
Dustless
no need
was
for us
familiar
to
with it.
interfere."
It was the void
Dustless
created
was
by
in
the
different.
future,
Just as he was about to
Shinozaki
turn around and
Ichigo.
leave,
Captain
he suddenly
Sama
noticed that the
Aizen
space
stood up
behind
and politely
Matsumoto,
said,
no matter what this
"Rukia
guy is, he
and
only wanted
Hinamori were
3
distorted."
places. Dustless,
Soul
who realized
Society,
that something was
Hueco
wrong,
Mundo,
scolded coldly.
in the modern world.
The 3 of you,
Aside
get
from
out of there
that,
now.
there are no other
The
places.
3 girls were stunned.
Dustless
Hearing
sneered
Dustless's
and
immediately
stern tone,
attacked Aizen.
they hurriedly dodged.
Captain Aizen,
They were
you want to send a
considered
Shinigami
talented.
to the modern
When they were in the
world
Jean
and
Central
Hueco
Spiritual
Mundo,
Technique
but we
Academy.
don't have that.
They already
many
knew
people.
how to teleport.
Immediately,
Aizen smiled
they used
calmly
all
and
their
said,
strength to
"Of course.
escape. I'm not going there.
The
to
black
wait.
cavities
That
behind
stupid
the girls
method
won't
suddenly
work.
exploded.
What I mean is,
A smaller,
since this
greater
monster
void
likes to
drilled
hunt
out
souls
and
we
pounced
should take
towards
the
girls.
initiative to lure
Even though
it.
they were very fast.
We don't even know
This
its
greater
location.
void was
How can we
clearly
lure it?
beyond
Dustless
Jillian's level
sneered.
and was
He felt
even
Aizen's
faster.
motives weren't
It almost
pure.
caught up to them.
It's
in
simple.
An instant.
Didn't
The most
Captain Yes say that a
unfortunate
monster
person
likes
was
to eat
Matsumoto.
That means it likes
Matsumoto.
people with high
The mysterious
Ryatsu.
daimyo's bone
Aizen
blade
smiled and
was
said
flickering with cold
confidently,
light.
I
It
think
was
it's
about
most
to
likely
pierce
to go to
Matsumoto.
Luhan Street or the modern world.
Matsumoto. It shouldn't have the ability.
Its
to
method
enter
was
Hueco
extremely
Mundo.
ruthless.
Dustless
It seemed like it
glanced
wanted
at
to
Aizen
kill her
and then
in a
looked
single
away.
strike.
Dustless was
Six staff
sure that
light
Aizen
prison.
didn't have good intentions.
6 golden
because
rays
Sosuke
came from all
Aizen
directions
was the one
and
who
restrained the
created
daimyo.
Now that he was
Matsumoto,
released for no reason,
Matsumoto.
there must be a
was finally
conspiracy.
spared.
This
Leave
daimyo
Soul
doesn't
Society's
seem right.
drifting soul
What the hell
street
is
to
that?
me.
I will tear
Dustless's
that bastard
expression
apart
froze.
and return peace.
He noticed that
to
something was
drifting
wrong.
Soul
It was
Street.
completely
A
different
rough
from
voice
normal
Ajuches
looking up
and
it was the
Vasto.
hungry Zaraki Kenpachi, waving his Zanpakuto excitedly,
Chapter
as if he was on
1043.
steroids. The mysterious
This brat has
greater
also
void
learned this
was
trick.
covered with
Public
strange
morals
patterns
are really
all over its
degenerating these
body.
days.
It looked
Dustless
messy,
couldn't help but
but
feel
in
helpless.
fact, it was
Even
filled with
Zaraki, who loved to fight, was
mysteries.
talking about peace.
Strange,
Among
it
all
seems
the
a little
captains,
familiar.
He was the
Wu
one who
Chan
was
raised
most
his
eager
eyebrows for
and
something
looked at the
big to happen.
mysterious pattern.
Raising his
He
eyebrows,
muttered in his heart.
A captain who rarely
Ka, ka,
spoke
ka.
suddenly stood
At
up.
this time,
Then the
an
modern
unexpected
world
crisp
dash
sound attracted
leave the
Dustless's
modern realm to
attention.
me.
Looking at the
Dustless
origin of the
glanced
sound,
at the person.
there were
and
cracks on the
immediately
6
stepped forward
huge
lights.
lights. Everyone's eyes focused
Death
on
God,
Dustless.
You want to
and
restrain
immediately
me with
looked at
trash
the
of this
captain
level, who just
You
spoke.
underestimate me.
This person
too
was
much.
the current captain of
The greater
10th
void
Division,
that looked like a
Ishin
mantis
Shiba.
turned its head.
Dustless
and
recognized
bared its teeth
this person.
at Dustless.
He was the father
I'm
of the
different from the
future
other Ajuches.
Shinozaki
Don't underestimate
Ichigo.
me. As soon as it finished speaking,
In
it
the
suddenly
future,
used force
he would be in cahoots
and
with
tore the
Uraharuka
6 light
Sook
prison
and the
apart
others.
with brute force.
Then Captain Dustless
it is indeed
will go
different
to the modern
Dustless
realm.
nodded his
Yamamoto
head
nodded
in agreement
and said,
This greater
"That's not
void in
good.
front of him
I heard that
was
there are a
indeed
lot
not
of
bad.
Quincy
Its
in the modern
strength
realm.
was higher
Why don't you
than
come with
Juche's.
us?
It would
be
be
best
not
if
at
you
the
can catch
level
some
of
for me to
Vasto
experiment
Lord.
on.
But he, after quietly
Mayuri
looking at
laughed
it
sinisterly
sinisterly
as he
Dustless's
waved his
expression
slender
was
fingernails that
the
were
light of
comparable to
destruction
blades.
flickered on his
Quincy,
fingertips.
Yamamoto's
So what if
cloudy
it's different?
eyes emitted a chill.
In the end, it's still a
and
juches.
Immediately said
As soon as he
coldly,
finished speaking,
although the chance
light
of being attacked
condensed
by
and
Quincy is
Dustless's
zero,
hand
it's
shot
good to
out.
go to the modern
Dow
realm
Breaker,
together.
88.
At least we can take care
Flying
of each other.
Dragon strikes the
Dustless
thief.
heard this
Whoosh,
and stared
whoosh,
at
whoosh.
Yamamoto.
An
Maybe other
extremely
people
thick
thought
beam
that
of light
Quincy was
flew
finished,
out, but
and
the captain
instantly
knew very
engulfed
well.
the entire world.
Quincy wasn't
There was no
completely
sense of
finished.
existence in the
1,000
sky.
years ago,
The light that
he
could be
didn't
said
kill
to be
Yawatch.
invincible
He only seared it.
evaporated
But why is
everything it touched.
Sosuke Aizen
Boom,
so
boom, boom.
confident?
An
Isn't he
ear-piercing
afraid that I will
explosion
kill
rang
Void
out,
White?
and an
Dustless
earth-shattering
frowned
shockwave.
He was sure that Eisen spent a lot of money to
surprising
create Void
was that
White.
although the mantis
He was a
like
greater
Ajuch's
Void
was
White
injured,
that was comparable
it was still
to
alive.
Vast, O Lord.
It didn't
was the
die.
accumulation
A
of
hint of
countless
surprise
souls.
flashed
It would be a
across
loss
Dustless's
if he was
calm
killed.
face.
After all,
he curiously
spent a lot of
looked at
effort
the
to
heavily
create
injured
Void White,
Ajuch's
and
saw
that
the
Ishin
irregular
Shiba
patterns.
his
All
eyes
over its
turned
body.
and fell in the
It was
usually
extremely
low-key
mysterious.
Ishin Shiba.
Dustless
In
frowned.
Dustless's
He
impression,
felt that he had seen
the
these
number of
patterns
times he
before,
spoke,
but
could
he
be
just
counted
couldn't
on
remember
one
when.
hand.
Damn
But now,
Grim Reaper.
he chose to take
I
the
won't let you go
initiative
never.
to attack.
Achukas,
It was the
who was in
opposite of his
excruciating
usual
pain,
low-key self.
roared angrily.
Forget it.
The
Let's
spiritual
talk about it
pressure
in
in
the
his
modern
body
realm.
surged.
Dustless
And a huge
didn't bother
sphere
with the things
condensed
in
in his
his
mouth,
mouth.
erupting
Just needed
with
to
a
deal with them as they
shockwave that
came.
could destroy the
There was no
true
need to do
central
anything
spiritual art academy.
superfluous.
Captain,
In front of
if we get hit by
strength,
that,
the true
all
central
schemes
spiritual
and tricks
art
were
academy
useless.
will definitely
This was the basis
disappear.
of Dustless's
Rukia
confidence.
said anxiously.
Eisen's
The
schemes
same was
wouldn't
true
have
for
any
Matsumoto
substantial
and
effect.
Hinamori. They would only
After all,
humiliate themselves.
this was their alma
and become a
mater,
joke. And it was
even
hard for
Ishin
them to part
Shiba
with it.
was
You're
the
talking
same.
about the situation
If he had any
where I
ulterior
hit him,
motives,
he didn't
could
even
just
have
kill
the
him as
chance
soon as
to
possible.
retaliate. After all,
Dustless
they were in the
smiled
modern
as he
realm.
lazily
He could push the
stuffed
blame
his hands
to
into
Hueco
his
Mundo.
sleeves.
After
Bastard,
about half an hour,
you should know when to
the
stop
captain's
looking down on
meeting ended.
others.
Tomorrow,
In his mantis
Dustless
form,
and Ishin
Ajuch's
Shiba
eyes
would
were
leave
spitting
Soul
fire.
Society.
This
and go to
bastard
the
was
modern
too
realm.
infuriating. He actually said that he wouldn't need to use his hands to finish him
Chapter
off.
1056.
What a shameless boast.
In the sky
He raised
above,
void
Kanzucho,
flash and anger.
the void
But
was
just as he was
distorted.
about to throw it
Two
out,
figures
something
floated
happened.
in the air,
Ten's
looking
Ho,
down
on the
at
surface of the
city
void
below.
flash.
Although I'm
A
not
black
used to
flame
it,
suddenly
I've been in Soul
appeared,
Society,
and then it
all year
exploded
round.
violently,
changing to the modern
boom,
world.
boom, boom.
All of a sudden,
The monstrous
it's quite
explosion
exquisite.
swept
Shiba
across the
Ishin
sky,
looked at the
and
metropolis
the entire
on the ground
true
and
central
said with
spiritual
emotion.
art.
He looked at the
Academy
cars
shook.
driving below.
An area
and
of
looked
about
at them
a few
curiously.
kilometers was turned
Soul
into a
Society has
huge
never
sea of
had
fire.
such a thing.
It burned
Captain
for a few
Ishin,
minutes before
is
it
this your
slowly
first
stopped.
time
in the
It
modern
was a
world?
spectacular sight.
Looking at the childlike
power of
Ishin,
Void Flash
Dustless
is
asked.
obviously stronger
Ishin
than
nodded and
Achuka's,
immediately
and
suggested.
even stronger than
Kanzucho
Void
is
Flash.
quite big,
And this guy
why don't we
obviously
split up to
isn't
find
an
that
Arcana
guy?
Breaker.
It's faster.
Strange.
Dustless
When did
nodded and
Hueco
agreed.
Mundo have such a
Then I'll
void?
go to the east.
Dustless muttered.
Then I'll
in
go to the
disbelief.
west.
He
Ishin
immediately
jumped
looked
quickly
at
on the
mantis
high-rise
void in
buildings.
front of him.
His steps
that was
light
affected
and
by
vigorous.
void flash.
He obviously wasn't
and
running
after thinking
around
for a while,
aimlessly,
he resolutely
but with a
walked
mysterious map.
Don't
in
come
his
over.
hand,
Maybe
looking
he still
left
has some
and
strength
right
left
to find his
Dustless
destination.
turned his head to
This kid's
Matsumoto
motives are
and
really
the others
impure.
and said,
His direction
Faster, damn it.
seems
I
to
won't
be.
let this go.
In a hidden
Void
alley,
roared.
Dustless
And his
stared at
body
Ishin in the distance
crazily
with a cold
absorbed
smile.
the Reiki
He had
contained
already
in the
vaguely
atmosphere.
guessed
This
where
scene
Ishin
shocked
was looking
Dustless.
for.
No
Impossible.
wonder Urahara
How can a
Kisuk was
void
kicked out of
directly
Soul
absorb
Society?
Reiki?
He's
and
not a
knew
Quincy.
so much inside
Death gods
information.
relied on
I
their
really
own
didn't know that
training
this kid
to
was
increase their
spy.
Reiki. After
While
thinking
void
for a while,
evolved by
Dustless
swallowing
followed.
each other.
His killing
Only a Quincy
intent
could
thickened.
directly
If
absorb
Ishin
Reiki
knew
from the
that
atmosphere.
Dustless had embezzled
Staring at
the
the
patterns on the
Hogyoku,
cockroach,
he would
Ajuch's
definitely
body
report it.
Dustless
to
had
the
a
head
flash of
captain.
inspiration in his
At this
mind.
time,
He
a
suddenly came
hysterical
to a
roar
realization.
mixed with
This
destructive
is a
spiritual
blood-calming
pressure
equipment.
shook the sky.
Squinting his eyes,
and the glass on both
Dustless
sides
suddenly
of the street
understood
was
what the
shattered
strange
by the
lines
powerful
were.
spiritual
After
pressure.
thinking for a while,
This spiritual
he
pressure
realized
is
that the
not
Quincy
right.
of the
The
Wandless
footsteps
Empire did
suddenly
indeed
sounded.
have the ability
Dustless
to
frowned,
give Void
keenly
the unique
aware of the
ability
different
Quincy.
spiritual pressure
Squatting in
between
front of
Shinigami
Void,
and
Dustless
Hollow.
extinguished the
Whoosh,
Reiki
whoosh,
in his
whoosh.
body.
A
and
black
asked
shadow cut
expectantly,
through the sky.
Kid,
Surrounded
I'm in a
by
good mood
flames,
today.
it was
Tell me the
Ishin.
source of the
Let's go and
Quincy's
see what you
power,
can do.
and I'll
With
spare
a
your
thought,
life.
Dustless followed.
If possible,
In short,
Dustless
he
also
planned
wanted
to
to
destroy
obtain the
Ishin,
ability of
or at least
Quincy.
banish him forever.
Thinking of Yawach's
Just like
omniscient
Urahara
and omnipotent
Kisuk,
super
Void
ability,
White doesn't
Dustless
seem to
felt
be
a
an
burst
opponent
of fire.
of Ishin Shiba.
Quincy? I don't know
Suddenly
about that
remembering
kind of
Void
thing.
White's strength,
Achuka's turned his
Dustless
head
couldn't
and
help
said
but
coldly.
worry. You're just
Although
a void,
Void
strength
but
was
your mouth
comparable
is
to
surprisingly
Vasto Lord.
stubborn.
He was still
Dustless
killed by
smiled
Ishin
carelessly.
in the end.
This
Soon
time,
after,
I'll
he leaned
reluctantly
close
help
to
Dustless's
Dustless's
ear
ear
and quietly
use
asked
Haku's
with a voice
hands
to
to
kill
kill
Ishin.
mosquito
in the alley,
that bastard
staring at
Ygritte
the
has
figure in
ward
front
did
of
it
him.
right?
Dustless's
Who was that?
chakra
I don't know.
began to surge.
Achuka is
as he
refuted with all
focused
his
on
might.
Ishin
Dustless snickered inward.
Breaker 90.
He clearly
Black
saw the
coffin.
fear that flashed
Several
through this guy's
black
eyes.
shadowless blades came from all directions and almost instantly approached Ishin Shiva,
Chapter
who
1044.
didn't know what was going on.
The eyes were
Ishin
the
was
window
shocked
to the
when he
soul.
saw this.
No matter what
Sensing
kind
the
of creature
sharp
it was,
auras coming
even
from
the slightest
all directions,
change
he
couldn't
shouted
escape
without
Dustless's
thinking.
fiery
Finding
golden
down
eyes.
number 73,
This great void
mountain
at the level of the
toppling
cockroach
crystal,
Ajuchas gave Dustless the first thought that he had a guilty conscience.
A transparent,
the evasive
triangular
gaze in his
defensive
eyes
formation
explained
instantly
everything.
appeared.
There is
and
no need to
protected
quibble.
Ishin.
Even though he managed to counterattack, so I know a little about the Dow Breaker 90's attack. Seeing that this cockroach refused to admit it, after a brief stalemate, the Black Coffin's attack tore. What are you trying to do? His defenses. The cockroach Big Void screamed in horror. His tone was somewhat sharp. Ishin's body was actually grabbed his torn open, and his eyes also underwent earth-shattering changes. It was such a shocking wound. His black pupils turned into a light purple color. Who did this? Come out for me. Spread out, enduring the unprecedented pitch black. Flickering unleashed his violent Ryatsu. The gem-like luster all the buildings within a radius of 100 meters, and the cockroach Ajuchas turning it into a plane visible at a glance. Under this pair of eyes, such a heavy injury, all secrets still couldn't be hidden and kicking, and its heart was beating is like probably beyond. What are you trying to do? But if you encounter Ajuchas, you should be with a trembling voice. Dustless, the current Dustless, who had already escaped, was completely chuckled and used the Tensigan's power. The light emitted from those strange eyes was like a god-looking his Ryatsu also began to rampage, and it made its scalp Ishin's reckless release of Ryatsu will only attract Void White's attention. Dustless revealed a gentle smile. When Dustless was about to watch a good show, there will be no danger. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. The newcomer was obviously a girl. Hearing this, with golden the cockroach Ajuchas flew into a rage, and her facial features were exquisite. Its ugly eyes, as if they were the work of hysterical madness. Her skin was as delicate as snow. The flash that was secretly watery eyes hit Dustless, were very lively, and the light and there were obvious sweat stains on her face. What you actually dared to come into contact most was that she was holding a crystal ball in her hand. Idiot death god. It's actually a Quincy. And what's with that face? Who was hit by like deja vu strange. At such a close distance, even if he wanted to use God's might to turn his body hollow, one was Bambiita, he didn't have the chance, and the other was Candace. The cockroach obviously didn't know this sigh of relief after but he had a vague impression of her spiritual pressure. Could it be her? Had completely after a while, disappeared. A name that matched the identity of the girl Quincy. How can a lowly race like Shinozaki understand the greatness? Shinozaki Makoto has the cockroach Ajuchas fight against the snorted in disdain, and she will definitely disrupt with a swipe of its hand if she helps. A long and narrow after pondering for a moment, cavity, Dustless rushed just as it was about to step in. Of course, the voice of the king of nightmares. If Void White can't kill its mind, then Dustless will do it himself. Looks like it really is Jugram. Tens of thousands of rays of light gathered on the ground and condensed into Dustless's chapter body. 10. He was frowning as he pondered with deep puzzlement. The things at the end of the world to be able to bestow their abilities under the abnormal eye power. Quincy is truly a mystical everything race. Was right in front of him. Dustless he actually forgot about the hatred between Shinigami and Quincy. This Quincy is really compassionate. Dustless secretly observed the situation. This kind of thing has nothing to do with him, so there's no need to meddle in other people's business. He just needs to find an opportunity to kill Ishin. Roar! The violent roar came again, accompanied by violent wind and waves. The central area was like an earthquake, and the ground was shaking and cracking, and the cracks were spreading rapidly. 1 meter, 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters. The cracks were getting bigger and bigger, and the exaggerated range was about to annihilate the whole world. The shaking gradually became farther and farther away, and the power did not weaken, but became stronger. Under Dustless's interested gaze, a monster with a knife, a mask, and a horn on its head was exposed under the sunlight. The most surprising thing was that this monster had a void hole, but it was blocked by a mysterious substance. Finally willing to come out? But its strength is really strong. Can the two of them deal with it together? Dustless had a big question mark in his heart. There is no doubt that the power of Void, the great Void in Shinozaki Ichigo's body, was beyond doubt. After erupting, it killed Vasto Lord, Ulquiorra, with overwhelming strength. Its strength was self-evident, especially when Ishin was seriously injured by Dustless. Overall, the situation was dangerous. Are you okay? Looking at Ishin's horrifying wound, Shinozaki Makoto rushed over and asked with concern. Her tone was as warm as the winter sun. No, I'm fine. I won't die for the time being, Ishin said firmly, but his trembling body betrayed him, and his forehead was full of sweat. Seeing this, the kind-hearted Kurosaki frowned and quickly took out her handkerchief. Just as she was about to wipe the sweat off Ishin's forehead, a huge flash of light swooped down and interrupted her action. It's Void Flash, get out of the way, Ishin shouted loudly, and immediately stood up, His body was releasing Ryatsu, but the crack on his wound was getting bigger and bigger, and blood kept flowing. The one who should get out of the way is you. Shinazuki Makoto resolutely stood beside Isshin, and many arrows were condensed from her fingers, aiming at the incoming flash. This little girl, Dustless, who was in the dark, looked at Shinozuki Makoto with shining eyes. From the fluctuations of Ryatsu and the skillful movements of the Quincy, she was definitely not weaker than Bambieta and Candace. By Shinozaki Makoto. Whoosh! A few divine arrows that were compressed by the spiritual particles were shot out. They rose from the ground and came into close contact with the falling flash. Boom! The power of the two moves was roughly equal, and they canceled each other out after the big explosion. Isshin Shiba gave a thumbs up. Although the creature in front of him couldn't speak and could only growl, it was definitely not weaker than Vasto Lord. Shinoz's, hers, s's, puff. At this moment, Shinozaki Makoto suddenly spat out blood. Her face was pale, and her body was on the verge of collapsing. Looking closely, a bloody mark appeared on her right shoulder. How surprising. This void is so cunning. Dustless was stunned. Others may not have seen the scene just now, but he saw it clearly. When the explosion occurred, a small red flash was spat out from Void's mouth. It was extremely fast, 20 times faster than an ordinary Void flash, but its power was greatly reduced. Using a Void egg to hit Shinozaki Makoto in the chaos. How cunning. Dustless sincerely admired Shinozaki Makoto. However, the next scene made Shinozaki Makoto, Isshin, and Dustless all petrified. How is it possible? This thing is just something made by Sosuke Aizen. How can it use that? He's not a Shinigami. Although it's a void made by a large number of Shinigami souls, it doesn't make sense for him to know Kido. And from the fluctuations of his Ryatsu, it's a high-level Heido. Dustless's heart was in turmoil. He didn't expect Void to know Heido. He had never heard of Shinozaki Ichigo before. Tsubai raised his right arm that was holding the bone broadsword, and a thick flash of light spread out. Even though White Void couldn't speak, Dustless still heard these words. Doubt Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes Thief Sky, shaking Thunder Cannon. Shinozaki Makoto and Isshin were injured, and they were like fish on the chopping board. They could only watch as the light engulfed them, and their hearts were filled with despair. Am I going to die? Damn it. Shinozaki Makoto raised a bitter smile and mocked herself. Her pretty face was full of unwillingness. No one wanted to die. Just when she had completely given up, a figure resolutely blocked in front of her. The thin figure was not worth mentioning under the light of destruction. The thin figure was unusually firm, and his eyes were indifferent. His pupils were calm and expressionless, as if he was looking at an insect. His eyes were full of unbearable bullying. Captain Dustless. Isshin was surprised, and the despair in her heart was immediately swept away. Captain? Shinozaki Mako's eyes widened when she heard that. She couldn't believe that the skinny man in front of her, whose skin was even smoother than hers, was actually a captain. Shinozaki Mako even suspected that Wuchen was shorter than her, but he was a captain. Dustless then raised his thin right arm under Shinozaki Makoto's incredulous gaze. You want to kill with a mere candlelight? Naive. The intimate pair of eyes suddenly widened. At the moment when the light beam fell, Wu Chen's right arm swept out, and the world that could destroy was easily shattered. The sky cleared up again. Chapter 1058. Shinozaki Makoto looked at the light that shattered in an instant with a shocked expression. That thick light beam was extremely fragile in front of Dustless, not even worth mentioning. Dustless raised his hand and scattered it. This guy can actually use Shinigami's Heido. Even Arcana Breaker can't do this. Looking at the palm of his right hand, Dustless felt that strange touch just now. He was sure that it was definitely Heido, not a violent attack like Void Flash. Awoo! As if provoked, Void, who was floating in the sky, let out a terrifying roar. His ferocious eyes stared at Dustless with murderous intent. Dustless, Shinozaki Makoto, and Isshin all felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Be careful, he's very powerful, not an ordinary Minos Grande. Seeing that Dustless was indifferent, neither attacking nor defending, Shinozaki Makoto solemnly reminded. Powerful? Maybe. Looking back leisurely, Dustless stared at Shinozaki Makoto's bloody shoulder. His eyes flashed with ridicule as he turned his head and shouted, "Come at me, beast!" Hearing this, Shinozaki Makoto's expression changed greatly. She was so depressed that she almost vomited blood. Her words were to tell Dustless not to provoke Void and not to call him a beast. You actually dared to provoke him on purpose. He's a conscious Minos Grande, not an ordinary one, Shinozaki Makoto said cautiously. She was sweating profusely and was very nervous. What are you afraid of? Looking at Shinozaki Makoto's eyes, Dustless said faintly, "Do you think you can live if you don't provoke him? You're too naive, woman. You don't understand Void. It's impossible to be set free. This guy was sent to kill people. It's the same whether I provoke him or not. No matter what happens in the end, it's a dead end," Dustless said bluntly. Shinozaki Makoto was confused and didn't understand what he meant. "He's coming." Seeing that White Void had disappeared, Isshin looked around and said in a deep voice, "This guy is very unusual. He is very strong, and his Ryatsu is also very strong, especially his speed. Bang, bang, bang." Isshin Shiba's voice hasn't fallen yet. He saw Wu Chun casually kick out, and a body suddenly flew out. Ka. White Void was sent flying by Dustless's kick. The powerful force caused him to smash through several buildings, and he fell into the ruins in a sorry state. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. How is that possible? So fast? Shinozaki Makoto exclaimed in shock. She didn't even see the entire process clearly. She only saw Wu Chun casually kick White Void, causing him to suffer a heavy blow. His body was sent flying 100 meters away. They even took away a few buildings. "Death God, let go of Jun Ho, or I'll kill your companion as well." A cold warning sounded out from the left as a silhouette walked out from the darkness. That person wore spectacles with killing intent in his eyes as he looked at the injured Kurosaki with a sinister expression. Ishida Ryuzo. Ripples appeared in Dustless's calm eyes as he recognized the person in an instant. He was Ishida Yulong's father. "Oh, right. No wonder you came out to look for Kurosaki Makoto. She is now the daughter-in-law of the Ishida family." Dustless's eyes gradually regained their clarity. He glanced at Ishida Ryuzo and ignored him. He had nothing good to say to this cold guy. This guy, how dare he ignore me? Damn it. Ishida Ryushin's face was filled with murderous intent. He flicked his wrist and formed a shining longbow. The arrow that was surrounded by cold air was aimed at Wuchen. "Xiaolong, you misunderstood. Without his help, I would have been dead," Kurosaki Makoto explained to Ishida Ryuzo. At the same time, she lifted her finger and pointed at the ruins in front of them. She said in a serious tone, "I sensed an unusual greater void and rushed over. But I didn't expect to be ambushed by him." Kurosaki Makoto smiled bitterly. Her tone was filled with unwillingness. "If it wasn't for him, I would have stepped into heaven." Ishida Ryuzo did not listen to her. He continued to aim at Dustless and said, "The Grim Reapers are all cunning. Don't be fooled by them." Also, after sorting out his thoughts, Ishida Ryuzo continued, "The Grim Reapers are all. You have been talking for a long time. I have always wanted to ask you a question." Without waiting for Ishida Ryuzo to finish his sentence, Dustless cut him off and said coldly, "Your existence is unnecessary. There is no stage for you here. Leave now. I don't want to see your face." Dustless glanced at Ishida Ryuzo and said calmly, "Don't force my hand." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A sharp sound pierced through the air. Ishida Ryuzo raised his head and shot out all the photon arrows in his hand. The number of photon arrows was dense and vicious. In an instant, Dustless was destroyed. Hundreds of holes appeared on his body. It was a tragic sight. Your strength is average, but your mouth is quite good at bragging. Seeing this, Ishida Ryuzo snorted in disdain. He then took a step forward. However, before his foot could touch the ground, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky and suppressed Ishida Ryuzo. Boom, boom, boom. The ground shook and a circular crater appeared. Flashes of light gathered and condensed into Dustless's body. His indifferent eyes looked down at Ishida Ryuzo. Dustless's right foot stepped on his face mercilessly. I said before that I don't like to see your face. Since you don't know what's good for you, I can only melt this disgusting face. As soon as his voice fell, a large golden light swept out from Dustless's feet. The temperature was so high that even steel could be easily melted. Chapter 1059. Ishida Ryuzo was shocked. He felt the aura of death that he had never felt before. The high-density light did not even touch him, but he felt like he was going to melt like water. Ishida Ryuzo was sure that if he were to take Dustless's attack in his current state, he would definitely die. Don't touch him, he's one of us. Shinozaki Mako's beautiful eyes widened with anxiety. Although she was disgusted by the marriage arranged by the Ishida family, she couldn't just watch Ishida Ryuzo get killed. After all, she owed the Ishida family a debt of gratitude. One of us. Dustless turned to look at Shinozaki and sneered. He took the initiative to attack me with the Holy Annihilation arrow. One of us attacking one of us? That's rare. Shinozaki Jinko was stunned when he heard this. He lowered his head silently in surprise. He knows the skill of Quincy. This time, it was Shinozaki's turn to be shocked. She looked at the shining leg that was approaching Ishida Ryuzo and quickly said, "That's a misunderstanding, he's fine." Naive, Dustless glanced at Shinozaki indifferently and said, "Before coming to the modern world, the head captain said that if you encounter a Quincy sneak attack, there is no need to show mercy. Kill without mercy. This kid is the one who started it. Do you think I need to show mercy?" Shinozaki, even if you don't understand the grudge between the Shinigami and Quincy, you should have heard of it. Ishin nodded. First of all, Shinigami and Quincy were hostile forces. Although he felt sorry for Shinozaki Makino, Ishida Ryuzo was the one who attacked first. He deserved to be killed. His hands were in Ishida Ryuzo's hands. No one forced him to do it. But Shinozaki's expression froze. She moved her lips but closed them again. She looked very helpless. "You're going to suffer if you're so kind." Dustless's voice was unusually light. In short, there was more vitality in it. He said, "Besides, do you think this arrogant kid will appreciate it?" The answer is no. Not only will he not, but he will also feel humiliated. For a man to be protected by a woman, this may be worse than killing him. Dustless's words were as sharp as a knife, piercing Ishida Ryuzo's self-esteem. His face, which could be considered handsome, suddenly became extremely distorted. "I hate people like you the most. Others saved you, but you don't appreciate it. You even put on an expression of, 'I'm very capable and don't need you to meddle in other people's business.' Actually, you're just a piece of trash." With a cold expression, Dustless's right leg landed on Ishida Ryuzo's face. Boom, boom, boom. A violent explosion resounded through the sky, and a wave of destructive force spread out. Steel was melted, buildings were erased, and even the invisible air was burned to the point of boiling. The temperature had increased by dozens of times. "Oh, I underestimated you. I almost forgot you are also a Quincy." The ground that Dustless and Ishida Ryukshin were standing on had been char black, but Ishida Ryukshin had managed to escape the calamity. "It's you who underestimated me. I'm a pure-blooded Quincy. Don't underestimate me." In the smoke, Ishida Ryuzo's arrogant voice could be heard. Following that, he was covered in all sorts of unruly patterns, and his skin had become as hard as a meteorite. Blood tranquilizer? Luckily, he's fine. Seeing this, Shinozaki Makoto heaved a sigh of relief. The rock that was hanging in front of his chest had also landed safely. Staring at Ishida Ryuzo's face, Shinozuki Makoto earnestly advised, "Little Long, you should leave this place first. There's no need for you to get involved in this mess. You are the only child of the Ishida family." The smoke dispersed, revealing Ishida Ryuzo's face. Shinozaki Makoto was dumbfounded and could not help but laugh out loud. "This guy. Haha, I'm dying of laughter." Ishida Shiba also looked at Ishida Ryuzo's disfigured face and laughed until he rolled on the ground. "You bastard. I'll tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes." Seeing this, Ishida Ryuzo was stunned. He then used Reisher to condense a mirror and looked at his face. His entire body turned red. There's no need to be so angry, right? At least I spared your life." Dustless shrugged helplessly. His eyes were filled with resentment, as if he was saying that Ishida Ryuzo should be thanking him. Looking closely, Ishida Ryuzo's handsome face was disfigured, and there was a huge footprint on it. It was like a branding iron, forever imprinted on Ishida Ryuzo's face. "You should be thanking me. If you walk on the streets like this, I guarantee that you'll turn heads 100%. Dustless teased. His tone was filled with schadenfreude. He hated people like Ishida Ryuzo the most. Others were kind enough to save you, but you didn't appreciate it and insisted on keeping up appearances. If that was the case, then you should live a pitiful life. You bastard, you must have done it on purpose." Ishida Ryuzo glared at him, and his lungs were about to explode. A huge footprint almost covered his entire face. How was he going to face others in the future? "You're right, I did it on purpose. But so what?" Dustless said uninterestedly and yawned. With a sleepy expression, it was obvious that he did not put Ishida Ryuzo in his eyes. "Aren't you the father of the second male lead? I'm going to hit you. If you're not happy, come and bite me." Chapter 1060. Ishida Ryukshin's entire body trembled and his face turned ashen. Killing someone was just a matter of nodding his head to the ground. What Wu-chun did was far worse than cutting him into 1,000 pieces. As a pure-blooded Quincy, Ishida Ryukshin thought highly of himself. Of course, it was undeniable that he had the capital to be superior. In this world, Quincy were very rare, and pure-blooded ones were even rarer. However, it was okay to be arrogant, but it depended on who the opponent was. To have a disdainful attitude towards someone who is stronger than you is courting death. "If I just kill you, it would be too easy for you. I think it's more interesting to let you live in humiliation." Dustless ignored Ishida Ryukshin's eyes that wanted to peel his skin and break his bones. Boom, boom, boom. A violent hurricane swept from the distance, and the earth shook. Everyone felt like there was a mountain on their back, and they couldn't move an inch. Not only did he not die, he became stronger. What kind of monster did Sosuke Aizen create? Frowning, Dustless felt the surging waves of Ryatsu. He was very surprised, and he had a clearer understanding of Empyrean strength. Then the sky turned dark red. A huge flash of light condensed above Empyrean's head, distorting space and time, like a whirlpool in the deep sea, swallowing the entire sky, and a red halo covered the sky. Gulp. Under this apocalyptic flash, everyone's expression changed greatly. Only Dustless could remain calm. Ishida Ishin and Ishida Ryukshin were seriously injured. They were already lucky that they didn't die from Dustless's sneak attack, and then they fought with Empyrean, and they were almost exhausted. As for Ishida Ryukshin, his handsome face was kicked by Dustless, and a domineering footprint was left on his face. "I must take revenge." Ishida Ryukshin touched his face and said while gritting his teeth, "Ayo, ayo, ayo." At this time, a strange roar shook the sky, and it was even more terrifying than Empyrean. What are you doing? What are you doing? Get out of the way. Don't come near me." Suddenly, a panic cry came. Dustless froze and subconsciously looked at Ishin. Shiba Ishin's mouth emitted a milky white spiritual pressure that covered his face like a mask. His spiritual pressure became different as he roared, which was similar to Subai's. This is voidification. This kid has been corroded by the power of the great illusionary realm. A glint of surprise flashed across Dustless's eyes as he exclaimed in shock. Only then did he remember that in the previous battle, Ishin Shiba was injured by Void, and 80% of Void's power had invaded his body. Damn it! How am I supposed to explain this to the head captain? Dustless had a headache. Before coming here, Old Man Yamamoto had told the two of them to take care of each other. Now that Ishin Shiba was inexplicably eroded by the power of the greater void, it was inevitable that he would be scolded. "Get out my way!" Shinozaki Makino screamed in fear. Shiba Ishin was approaching her with saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. "You bastard, get away from Janine!" Flying sidekick. Ishida Ryukshin roared and channeled all the spiritual particles in his body towards Shiba Ishin. Shiba Ishin, who was completely consumed by the great illusionary realm, had an arrogant smile on his face as he opened his mouth and shot out a fiery red light. Boom, boom, boom. The destructive light easily blew away Ishida Ryukshin like a kite with a broken string. Bang, bang, bang. A few hundred meters away, Ishida Ryukshin was lying on the ground with his body charred. He was gasping for breath, and his heartbeat and breathing were very weak. It looked like he was about to stop. Monsters are gathering. Seeing this, Dustless sighed. Then, he turned into a photon and rushed towards Ishin at the speed of light. "Get out of my way!" Shinozaki Makino looked at Ishin in fear. Her soul was trembling as she was forced to a corner. Ishin was also approaching her with his teeth bared. Ishin was covered in milky white spiritual pressure. Under Shinozaki Makino's desperate gaze, he raised his sharp nails and stabbed towards her. "If you're dematerialized, even if you're my colleague, I can't let you go." "I'm sorry, Captain Ishin." Shinozaki Makino's hopeless eyes were filled with hope. Dustless stood in front of her with a sinister smile, and a thick beam of light condensed on his fingers. Laser! The flash of light poured out and hit Ishin Shiba without any accident. Boom, boom, boom. The moment the light touched Ishin, it exploded. The scorching heat engulfed him, and the milky white spiritual pressure on his skin was melted. Hee. God is kind to me. Why should I save you? I can use this opportunity to kill you. You bastard, you're a traitor. You flirted with Urahara Kisuk and Sifin Kortii. This is retribution. Dustless laughed. Since Ishin was already dematerialized, killing him would be an official matter. The head captain would not say anything. He could also use this opportunity to reap the rewards. Killing two birds with one stone. Pour all the dirty water on Ishin's head, make him the scapegoat, and kick him out of Soul Society. Roar, roar, roar. As if they had a tacit understanding, White Void also suddenly attacked from the side, opening his bloody mouth to bite at Yishuin. The winner of this game has been decided. There's no need for you to exist. He turned his head and glanced at White Void. Suddenly, the space around him flashed with black light. It was tens of thousands of times sharper than a blade. Without exception, all of them were pointed at White Void. Dustless spat out a cold breath and ended White Void's life instantly. 90 Black Coffin of Hado. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. Countless rays of black light swarmed over, instantly crushing the body of Ethereal White. Chapter 1061. Number 90's Hado cut through the void. His entire body was covered with scars, and his body was on the verge of collapsing. He was bleeding profusely, and the blood vessels in his body could not be stopped. Ow, ow, ow. All beasts were ferocious, and the void was no exception. He was originally a greater void, and was naturally easily angered. Being severely injured by Dustless did not suppress his bloodthirst. Instead, he was completely enraged. Roar. The heart-wrenching roar of anger spread, deafening everyone. Their brains were not listening to their commands, and the only thing they could think of was the void's roar. After all, it was created. The nature of the beast did not change. Dustless was unfazed by the roar that was filled with endless killing intent and hatred. The difference between them was too great, and there was no comparison at all. They were not even of the same origin. In Dustless's eyes, it was just the unhappiness of a child who was beaten to tears. Ka ka ka. The surrounding void shattered like a mirror, and there was a series of cracking sounds. The sky was swallowed by the red demonic light, and the places that were affected by the light were filled with dead silence. What kind of monster is this guy? He knows Void Flash, and he seems to know the ghost owl ability of the Grim Reaper. Shinozaki Makoto swallowed his saliva and said in disbelief. He was so shocked that his entire body was trembling slightly. Dustless turned his head and glanced at Shinozaki Makoto. Disappointment flashed through his eyes, and he sighed to himself. What a pity. Her body was also infiltrated by the Void's power. She will die soon. Dustless sighed to himself. A pure-blooded Quincy was extremely rare, and there were not many of them in the world. Most of them were Habaku's lackeys. You are also a tragedy, Dustless suddenly said after a while. What do you mean? Shinozaki Makoto's expression changed slightly. He could sense that Dustless was implying something else. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, the Void Flash that Void White painstakingly created was completed. It turned into a Void Flash that was the size of a human's head, and the power it emitted was enough to destroy the world. What a terrifying Void Flash. Feeling the power of Void Flash, Shinozaki Mako said in fear. He instinctively shrunk his neck and stared at the giant Void Flash in the sky. Fear flashed in his beautiful eyes. In the end, she's still a woman. No, in the end, she's still just a student. Dustless calmly said as he stared at Shinozaki in her student uniform. It was normal for him to be afraid. After all, this was the first time he had met such an invincible great Void Realm expert, and he even had the ability to control the Grim Reaper. Dustless focused his gaze on the expanding Void Flash. A murderous grin appeared on his face. In order for you to disappear without a trace, show me some of your true abilities. As soon as Dustless finished his words, a strange black sphere appeared behind him. It was the size of a fist and looked harmless. It was impossible for it to kill the enemy, but Shinozaki's body instinctively moved back. This Shinozaki Makino was shocked as he stared at the mysterious bead in a daze. Suddenly, he realized that his body was no longer listening to him and instinctively wanted to avoid it. Just disappear forever. Dustless glanced at Void Flash coldly. Under his command, the truth-seeking ball floating behind him flew out. Roar! White Void also clearly sensed the black sphere, but he quickly gave it a look of disdain, even treating it as air. He did not feel any spiritual pressure fluctuations. It did not seem to have any destructive power, so he continued to focus on transferring spiritual pressure to Void Flash. Is it really going to work? Shinozaki Makino's face was filled with doubt. Under Void Flash's indifferent gaze, the truth-seeking ball came into contact with his body. Crack, 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 crack. Void Flash was as hard as a meteorite. Even number 90 Dow Breaker, Black Coffin, could not shatter it. His entire body started to collapse. The process was extremely strange. There were no wounds on his body, but he just disappeared mysteriously. His legs, abdomen, arms, head, all of them collapsed one by one. Roar! Void Flash roared unwillingly. His mouth, full of sharp teeth, spat out cold air as he stared at Dustless. Madness flashed in his eyes. Void Flash, condensed on the horns on his forehead, was thrown out with all of his strength. Even in death, you want to drag me down with you? This is very similar to Aizen's style. Staring at the incoming flash, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. The truth-seeking ball appeared behind him again. It was not proportional to the huge flash of light, but Kurosaki's face was full of relief. With the previous lesson, her heart also relaxed. As expected, the moment Void Flash came into contact with the truth-seeking ball, it collapsed on its own. The haze that shrouded the world also disappeared, and everything returned to normal. It's finally over. Seeing this, Shinozaki Makino breathed a sigh of relief. She immediately tried to stand up, but a black shadow covered her. Miss Shinozaki, you are also injured. Soon, you'll be eroded by the power of the greater void and die. Dustless walked over and said lazily. Shiba Ishin was lying on the ground far away. The mask on her body was gradually collapsing. It was obvious that she was fighting against the power of the void in her body. I know. The power of the void is a fatal poison to the Quincy. Shinozaki Makino's beautiful eyes were dim. Her beautiful face was filled with loneliness as she said helplessly, I told you, no living creature wants to die. Dustless's lips curled into a faint smile. He continued, Miss Shinozaki, I can guarantee that you will be safe. Even if the power of the void destroys the dormitory, it will be fine. But we have to make a deal. Only then can I help you out of this crisis. Shinozaki Makino frowned. She looked at Dustless's eyes. After hesitating for a while, she said, Let's hear it. Chapter 1062. Shinozaki was curious about Dustless's true thoughts. She couldn't understand how a dying person like her could be of any use to Dustless. She might not even be of any use to him. Dustless closed his eyes and seemed to be thinking about something. His brows were tightly knitted. Am I of any value to you? Shinozaki asked curiously as she stared at Dustless's thoughtful face. She was just a dying person. She didn't think that she was of any value to be used or valued. Of course. Dustless grinned and revealed a mysterious smile. Even the most insignificant chess piece can explode with the most destructive power if used properly. Not to mention, you're very important. Shinozaki's face was blank. She didn't think that she was of much use. She was just a dying person. Do you know who your ancestor is? Dustless has suddenly changed the topic and asked. Ancestor? Shinozaki made a distressed expression and bitterly smiled. I really don't know who the ancestor of the Shinozaki family is. Dustless shook his head and said directly, I'm talking about Yawatch. Shinozaki thought for a long time before answering. Yawatch, I think there was such a person. I heard that he was the ancestor of all Quincy, but I heard that he died many years ago. It's good that you know Yawatch. Dustless wiped the sweat off his temples. He was afraid that Shinozaki was an ignorant person and had to start from the beginning. And then? Don't tell me that Yawatch came back from the dead. Shinozaki blinked her gem-like eyes and said playfully, Why do you think he's dead? Dustless glanced at Yawatch with a deep gaze and asked instead of answering. You have to understand that Yawatch is the god of all Quincy. Even if he's immortal, god? He's not worthy. He's just a butcher. Dustless was planning to brag about Yuhabak and then scold him. Who would have thought that Shinozaki Manori would rudely interrupt him? Could it be, thinking of a possibility, Dustless asked tentatively, was your ancestor killed by Yawatch? Although it was just Dustless's guess, it was highly likely because the hometowns of Busby and Jugram were both conquered by Yawatch and eliminated by Yawatch. And such examples could be found everywhere. Well, I'm not too sure about the specifics. All I know is that Yawatch isn't a good person. The elders of my family once said that Quincy's decline was caused by Yawatch. It was all to satisfy his selfish desires, Shinozaki Makoto explained. His tone was filled with hatred. Idiot, that's because you Abyss Annihilation was too stupid. You drank Yawatch's blood and deserve to be killed. You will all become nourishment for the saints in the future. Dustless complained in his mind. Those who wanted to quickly increase their strength would accept the gift of Yawatch, which was his own blood. Therefore, during the parting, it would be the nourishment for Yawatch to become stronger. In addition, the souls of those with impure blood would also belong to Yawatch after death. We've been talking for a long time. What do you want from me? Shinozaki Makoto reminded Dustless when he saw that Dustless was getting further and further away from the topic. Seeing that Shinozaki Makoto was angered by Yawatch, Dustless said, I'm sorry to tell you that Yawatch is not dead. It's just sealed. Other than that, the impure blood of Quincy is the nourishment for Yawatch's resurrection. You weren't one of them in the past. Now, your blood has been integrated with the power of the void, and your blood is no longer pure. This means that you are also one of the nourishments for Yawatch's resurrection. The biggest reason why Shinozaki Makoto would fall in the future was because of Yawatch. Impossible. How do you know all this? Shinozaki Makoto denied it immediately. Besides, I've never drunk Yawatch's blood. How can I be its nourishment? Dustless glanced at the flustered Shinozaki Makoto and said coldly, You haven't drunk Yawatch's blood, but what about your ancestor? Don't forget that Yawatch is the ancestor of all Quincy. Shinozaki Makoto was speechless. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't find a reason. What do you want? After a while, Shinozaki Makoto fixed his gaze on Dustless and said, If what you said is true, it's useless even if you save me. My blood is no longer pure. In the future, Yawatch will still take away my power. Your death is a foregone conclusion. There are some things that I can't change. Dustless looked at Shinozaki Makoto with a complicated expression. Although he was powerful, he wasn't omnipotent. He caught the unwillingness in Shinozaki Makoto's eyes and said, Are you willing to be killed by Yawatch? In fact, I can help you take revenge. Shinozaki Makoto was very doubtful. Really? Yawatch used to be the king of Quincy. Its strength must be shocking. Of course. Dustless smiled strangely and moved closer to Shinozaki Makoto. He said darkly, The so-called Sane is actually just extracting your soul. I can implant something special in your soul in advance. I'll make that bastard Yawatch suffer so much that he'll wish he was dead. It'll be revenge for you. What do you think, Miss Shinozaki? Shinozaki Makoto was silent. Hesitation was evident in his eyes. Dustless wasn't surprised to see Shinozaki Makoto hesitate. He said, The great void in your body will soon devour your entire body. You'll die in a few hours. However, I can use my ability to help you suppress the great void and let you live for a few more years. In return, you have to let me implant a spell in your soul to give that bastard Yawatch a surprise. Chapter 1063. Shingo Kurosaki was instantly speechless. He didn't know what to say, but he felt that it was awesome. Previously, Wu-chun was still trying to talk to her and was very polite. Now that he suddenly called her an old bastard, she didn't come back to her senses for a moment. She had a feeling that she was in the clouds, as if everything that Wu-chun did before was just a disguise. What's your choice? Although you may die in the future, you will at least live for a few more years. Wu-chun asked. He was sure that Shinozaki Manori would agree. Although this woman was very gentle and her smile was as warm as the sun, there was another side to her personality. She was very strong, but she wouldn't compromise with the curse of fate. Even if she knew that it was a struggle before death, she would never give up. I promise you, Shinozaki replied resolutely. Her fragile appearance was replaced by strength. That's for the best. Dustless gently nodded. Just as he was about to pull Shinozaki away, the remaining restless spiritual pressure in the atmosphere strangely quieted down, and Dustless's footsteps also stopped. What a surprise! You actually suppressed the great void in your body. Dustless's gaze fell on Isshin as he nodded with a hint of appreciation in his tone. At the same time, he looked at Shinozaki beside him with a strange feeling in his heart. Because of Dustless's intervention, Shinozaki and Isshin were like strangers. Now, it seems that the probability of them becoming husband and wife in the future was reduced to 0. What were you talking about? Who is Yawatch? Isshin, who had just woken up, asked. When he was fighting against the great void in his body, he faintly heard a lot of unknown information. Moreover, what the two said was reasonable, and it was obviously not nonsense. You heard it all? Dustless was stunned for a moment before he asked indifferently. His face was covered with frost. The Great Void's recovery ability is really amazing. Shinozaki has returned to normal in such a short time, and his body is intact. The original sword wound is also healed. Dustless secretly nodded, and the way he looked at Isshin changed. The hunter looked at his prey with sharp and threatening eyes. What do you plan to do? Coming closer to Dustless, Kurosaki Manori spoke in a voice that only the two of them could hear. What if he leaks the news? Speaking up to hear, Shin Ozaki closed his mouth and waited for Dustless's reply. Hearing this, Dustless's lips curled into a faint smile. His expression was frivolous as he said, Don't worry, there's a type of person in this world who will never speak. Only the dead would be speechless forever. Shin Ozaki Makoto was intelligent, so he naturally knew what Dustless was trying to do. However, he suddenly regretted it. Looking at Dustless's gloomy face, he felt as if he was asking a tiger for its skin. He felt that if Yawatch was a jackal, the young man in front of him was a ferocious tiger. Captain, what do you think about the modern world? After a while, Dustless suddenly closed his eyes and asked. Hearing this, Isshin was stunned. He subconsciously looked around and said, although it's not as exquisite as Soul Society, it still has its own unique flavor. My first impression of it is pretty good. Wu Chun shook his head. The light on his right arm floated and condensed into a golden sword. He said coldly, Captain Shiba, you misunderstood me. I mean, what will happen if the modern world becomes a graveyard? Graveyard? Hearing this, Isshin was puzzled. He looked at Dustless and saw that his face was dark and murderous. In a trance, Isshin saw an unprecedented beast. It opened its bloody mouth and bared its fangs at him. Captain Dustless, what do you mean? Isshin, who felt that something was wrong, was secretly on guard. Looking at Dustless, who was emitting murderous aura, his right hand was already holding the hilt of his Zanpakuto. No wonder you were plotted against by Aizen Sosuke. Your brain is really slow. Captain, I said this. I mean to destroy you, because you heard something you shouldn't have heard. Dustless said casually. Isshin's expression changed, and he immediately took the fiercest reaction. Bakudo number 61, Rokudo Light Prison. 6 huge golden light ribbons attacked from all directions, subduing the sloppy Dustless in an instant. Not only Wuchin, but Shinozaki Mako, who was beside him, also received the same treatment. He was restrained by 6 huge light ribbons and was unable to move. Capture you and send you to Soul Society for the head captain to deal with, Isshin said sternly. However, as soon as his voice fell, a burst of fragmented sound made Isshin's expression stiff, completely replaced by astonishment. Wu Che just raised his foot and moved slightly, and the Bakudo that bound him instantly disappeared. He calmly looked at Isshin. Bakudo number 61, Rokudo Light Prison. At the same time, 6 huge rays of light came from all directions, instantly blocking Isshin's escape route and binding him to the heavy armor. Kakaka, seeing this, Isshin's body swayed left and right, and after a while, he couldn't help but blush. He tried to destroy it in the same way as Dustless, but it was futile. The effect was negligible. Pucci, in desperation, Isshin could only use his sword to destroy the Rokudo Light Prison and break free from it. He looked around and hurriedly looked for Dustless, but he was surprised to find that Dustless was nowhere to be seen, and his Ryatsu was completely gone. Pucci, a cold light, came from behind and penetrated Isshin's body. He suddenly turned around and saw Dustless. Of course, there was also the golden sword in his hand, which almost instantly injured Isshin, and the golden sword pierced his heart. The gap between you and me is like the gap between Vasto Lord and Gilliam. Chapter 1064. Isshin looked at the golden sword in disbelief. Because of the high temperature, he felt an unprecedented, stinging pain. His face suddenly became pale and extremely haggard. How is this possible? Did he come from a sky? Isshin was shocked. He couldn't figure out where Dustless came from. He looked around but couldn't find any trace. As expected of the captain, you are really talented. But unfortunately, you are my enemy, and you heard something you shouldn't have heard. Don't think that you will be safe. You will have to pay the price. Dustless chuckled. He jumped out using the heavenly hand, so Isshin couldn't understand it. Whoosh! A cold light swept across, piercing Dustless's eyes. He looked up and saw Ishin waving his Zanpakuto at Dustless in a very tricky way. Funny, seeing this, Dustless didn't dodge. He raised his thin right arm and grabbed it. It seemed that he wanted to catch Ishin's attack with his bare hands. "You are courting death." Seeing how arrogant Wuchen was, Ishin's murderous aura surged. His black pupils were filled with murderous aura, and his strength was several times stronger than before. "Your hatred for me is quite deep." Dustless smiled. His right arm was still grabbing the Zanpakuto. Clang! A roar of steel resounded, and the head was not separated from the body as expected. The whole hand turned into 5 black fingers and easily caught the incoming Zanpakuto. "You caught my Zanpakuto with your bare hands?" Ishin exclaimed in disbelief while enduring the pain all over his body. It was as if he was in a dream. Everything that happened in front of him was illusory. As I said before, the gap between you and me is the gap between Vasto Lord and Killian. It was just a boring one-sided crush. Do you think you could be on par with me? Don't joke around. We're not 2 or 3 years old kids. Don't have such unrealistic thoughts in the future. The chakra in his body surged, and his eyes rapidly twisted. Ripples gushed out from his purple eyes, easily forcing Ishin to retreat. Shinra Tensei. The repulsive force easily sent Shiba Ishin flying, forcing him to retreat again and again, cutting a sorry figure. So, Dustless took a step forward and appeared next to Ishin Shiba in an instant. He chased after him and attacked him. The Kusanagi sword in his hand shone brightly. Clang, clang, clang. The sparks from the clash of swords and sabers were particularly dazzling, and the frequency was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the two had clashed dozens of times, but the situation was almost one-sided. Ishin was forced back by Dustless, and the wounds on his body were getting more and more, and he was bleeding nonstop. Pucci. Dustless aimed his Kusanagi sword at Shiba Ishin's right shoulder. Shiba Ishin's right arm was cut open, and his right arm that was holding the Zanpakuto trembled. His Zanpakuto almost fell to the ground. Light speed kick. Taking advantage of this, a straight flash of light whizzed out. The momentum was fierce, and it was like a golden spear that was unstoppable. Ishin wanted to dodge, but at this moment, he was already covered in wounds. Although they weren't fatal, the number of wounds greatly limited his speed. He was inevitably hit by the flash of light. Boom, boom, boom. The earth trembled, and Ishin, who was covered in black smoke, was sent flying. His body was severely burned, and his face was unrecognizable. "Is this the end?" Glancing at Ishin, Dustless said uninterestedly. When he was about to finish him off with his Zanpakuto, Ishin stood up again. Shinozaki Ichigo in the future must be inherited. Seeing this scene, Dustless was interested again. He was about to test how long Ishin could last, but his body strangely emitted a black mist. This is the spiritual pressure disappeared? What's going on? Dustless was surprised, and he suddenly realized that he couldn't feel Ishin's spiritual pressure. It was as if it suddenly disappeared into thin air, and he couldn't detect it at all. No wonder he woke up and was willing to come back to the shore. Dustless guessed and immediately shook his head. Ishin was a stubborn person, and it was impossible for him to give up, so there was only one possibility. He had evolved to a higher dimension than Dustless. Could it be Moonless? Although it was just Wu Chen's personal guess, he said with certainty, "That's right. So far, there were only 2 people who had truly released Moonless. One was Shinozaki Ichigo, and the other was his father, Ishin. Get out of the way. Something is wrong with this guy." She was counting on Dustless to save her life. If Dustless died first, she would die with him. And Ishin Shiba in front of him was obviously not right. There was a mysterious black mist floating around his body, and so was his Zanpakuto. Especially his deep eyes. They were dead silent, as if they could see through people's hearts full of oppression. "This is my strongest move," Ishin said with a hoarse voice. "After using this move, I will completely lose the power of the Shinigami, and it is also my last move to end you." Hearing this, Dustless looked at Ishin sadly and said lazily, "It is indeed a very strong move, but it can only end you. It can't end me. It's also impossible. You're just asking for it, Captain." Dustless looked at Ishin calmly. "It's just moonless. There's no need to worry." Chapter 1065. Ishin Shiba Zanpakuto was nowhere to be seen. The blade in his hand was completely made up of mysterious black mist. There was no blade, no cut, and no pressure. Everything looked normal at first glance. Other than the fact that he couldn't sense Shinozaki Ishin's Ryatsu, everything else was normal. Only Dustless felt the threat of death. "Bring it on, Ishin Shiba." Dustless wasn't surprised that Ishin Shiba knew how to use Moonless. After all, he was the one who taught Shinozaki Ichigo how to use Moonless. It was only natural that Moonless would be used as well. This father and son had many similar techniques. Although the state in front of him was similar to Moonless, there was a fundamental difference. They were two different techniques, but they were similar to Shinozaki Ichigo's Moonless. Dustless cleaned the dust on his clothes and said helplessly, "So strong. My clothes are stained with so much dust." Is this guy not afraid of death? He can still remain calm in the face of such a powerful and dangerous technique. And he's even provoking that Shinigami called Ishin Shiba. He was completely different from Dustless. Shinozaki, who was watching in the dark, cursed Ishin Shiba for seeking death. Ishin Shiba didn't make any excessive moves. However, his face was covered in frost, and the invisible blade in his hand grew larger and larger. "Go to hell and repent." As soon as his voice fell, Ishin raised his black blade and swept out. A huge chop was like a hot knife through butter. The ground was easily torn apart like a piece of paper. The black light that wanted to destroy everything could condense time and space. The world was solemn, and only the crisp sound of cracking could be heard. The earth was completely destroyed by Moonless. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of destruction. I thought it would be a powerful technique. I was looking forward to it, but it's just this. Glancing at the incoming black light, Wu Chun regained his composure. He waved his big hand, and a dazzling brilliance swept out from the void behind him. A strange spiral weapon emerged from it. The moment the strange sword appeared, it emitted a demonic red light that quickly deciphered the structure of the entire world. "What is that?" Ishin Shiba and Makoto Kurosaki's attention was attracted by the aura of the ancient desolation era. Their expressions changed, especially when Ishin instinctively retreated. When he regained his senses, he was shocked, and his mind was in a mess. How evil! Shinozaki Manori was also mentally prepared. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. As far as she knew, voidness was the most evil thing in the world. However, compared to that strange spiral sword, the so-called voidness was not even worth mentioning. It's normal to feel fear. After all, this thing can sever the entire world. Dustless said softly as he gripped the Gwaili sword. With a gentle flick of his thumb, the Gwaili sword spun at high speed as if it was turning its head. A dark red hurricane of destruction swept out. The red hurricane descended upon the world. From an insignificant small tornado, it instantly expanded thousands of times. If not for Dustless deliberately suppressing it, Kongzucho would have collapsed in the blink of an eye. The red hurricane was extremely terrifying. The moment it appeared, it tore apart the void. The originally clear day dimmed, and it was as if they had arrived at the depths of the dark and cold universe. Ishin Shiba's moonless sword, which he had used all his strength to cast, was destroyed by the hurricane. The destroyed void was extremely horrifying. The ghastly cracks were enough to send chills down one's spine. Every time it was repaired, it would be shattered by the remnant energy of the good separation sword. The cycle continued until the remnant energy of the good separation sword was completely destroyed. Dustless looked at Ishin Shiba, but he was surprised to find that the kid had disappeared. Oh, F asterisk CK. I was careless. Dustless suddenly slapped his head and cursed. That kid is really smart. He's as cunning as a rabbit. Kurosaki did not know whether to laugh or cry. He looked deeply at Dustless and said bluntly, "You can't even lie to a 3-year-old child. You must have let him go on purpose. You're helping your enemy." Dustless did not deny it. He admitted, "So what if I help my enemy? If he really has the ability to kill me in the future, I will thank God." Dustless touched the Hogyoku on his chest and looked helpless. If it was in the past, he would definitely kill the dangerous enemy in advance. However, the evolution of the Hogyoku was too strange. Dustless had to be afraid of death in order to evolve to a higher realm. What kind of person could make Dustless feel afraid? Of course, it was someone stronger than him. It would be best if Ishin Shiba could surpass Dustless's level in the future. Let's go. It's time to experiment on you. The sky was dark. In a foreign world, there was no end to it. It was dead, and there was no one around. At this moment, the void distorted and a large whirlpool appeared. 2 figures stepped out of it. This is my God's might space. It's in another dimension, so no one will disturb us. Don't worry. Wuchen explained when he saw Shinozaki Manori looking around suspiciously. All right, take off your clothes. Wuchen glanced at Shinozaki Manori and said indifferently, "Hey, take off my clothes?" Kurosaki's expression froze. She hesitated and was obviously embarrassed. Kurosaki looked at Dustless from the corner of her eyes. She saw that his eyes were as clear as water. There was not a trace of lust in them. Kurosaki gritted her teeth and nodded. However, Dustless's next sentence made her suspicious. "Hurry up and take it off. I promise I won't peek at you." Wu-chan said impatiently as he felt helpless towards Shinozaki's hesitation. Kurosaki's face was full of doubts. Just as she was about to ask, the strange spiritual pressure in her body went berserk. Her expression changed, and she undressed without hesitation. Chapter 1066. Shinozaki Minori's skin was as white as snow. It was smooth and smooth. It was as if there were no impurities in it. Shinozaki Makoto's figure was also extremely hot. She had a voluptuous figure with a curvy front and back. She had a lot of curves in the right places and a lot of curves in the right places. However, Dustless did not have the time to appreciate such a soul-stirring scene. It's a miracle that you can still retain your consciousness even with this thing. I give you full marks for your desire for life. There was a hole in Shinozaki Makoto's chest. It was slightly smaller than a fist, and it penetrated her entire body. Shinozaki Makoto's sweat dripped down like raindrops. You still have time to be sarcastic. Heal me. I can't hold on for long. Shinozaki Makoto reminded when she saw that Dustless was not doing anything. Don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly. There are some things that I need to promise you. Inside the dead silent space of Shunwei, Wuchen took out a blade of grass from nowhere and held it in his mouth frivolously. He was so relaxed and comfortable that he sat on the ground with his buttocks and remained motionless. Don't you feel pain when you talk while sitting? Shinozaki Makoto was furious and glared at Dustless. She could feel that something was wrong in her body. The power of the Great Void was gradually eating away at her spiritual pressure. Her mind was in a trance, and sometimes it was good, and sometimes it was bad. The roar of the Great Void came out of her mouth. It's actually very easy to suppress the Great Void in your body. You just need to. Looking at Shinozaki Makoto, who was in pain, Dustless knew that it was not the time to drag it on. He said, "You just need to inject a power that is completely opposite to the Great Void. In other words, the power of the Grim Reaper will suppress the Great Void's spiritual pressure, and you will not become void. However, your pure blood that belongs to Quincy will be contaminated." Dustless stopped and waited for Shinozaki Makoto's decision. "Just do it. There's no problem." Shinozaki Makoto's tone was firm. "That's good." Seeing this, Dustless nodded slightly and immediately sneered. I will inject my own spiritual pressure and soul into your body, but there will be something special in it that will seal a certain technique. But there is no need to worry. It will not affect your normal life. Shinozaki Makoto pouted with obvious dissatisfaction. Regardless of whether the Kage affected his daily life or not, no one would want to have something inexplicable placed in his body. Forget it. Let's hurry up and get ready. The cheerful Shinozaki Makoto smiled and said with a relieved tone. Dustless didn't waste any time. He quickly got up and walked to Kurosaki Mako's side. He injected his spiritual pressure and soul into her body to suppress the void. With Dustless's help, Shinozaki Jindo was safe and sound in the end, and he successfully implanted the transcription seal in Shinozaki Jindo's body. With Dustless's current strength, he could place the transcription seal into anyone's body at will, but its power would be greatly reduced. Therefore, he placed it into the soul and spiritual pressure that he had implanted in Shinozaki Mako. Once Yawatch used the same ability to forcibly extract Shinozaki Jindo's power, it meant that Dustless's power would be devoured by Yawatch. The Amaterasu, sealed in the transcription seal, would burn. Amaterasu was the most effective against a person's soul. Time passed, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Shinozaki Jindo left safely, and Dustless naturally returned to Soul Society. Soul Society held the same captain's meeting as usual. Is this true? Inside a team house, Yamamoto frowned as he listened to Dustless's report. Yes, head captain. Dustless's expression was serious as he answered. The situation had been exaggerated by him, and the gist of it was that Shiba Ishin was severely injured and was unfortunately killed by Void White. As for Wu Chun, he went through untold hardships to kill White Void and take revenge for Shiba Ishin. Allah, Captain Dustless's captain on a mission is always in trouble. Ikamaru Jin chuckled, and his tone was obviously criticizing. That's why, Captain Ikamaru Jin, don't ever meet me. Otherwise, the next unlucky one may be you. Dustless naturally didn't want to be outdone and immediately retorted. It's considered a perfect mission, but it's a pity that we lost Captain Shiba. Head Captain Yamamoto was so upset that he wanted to vomit blood. In Soul Society, there were always captains who were killed or died from other unnatural causes. Not bringing back that void is a serious crime. Mayuri said unhappily. His 12th Division put in a lot of effort to capture Void White, but in the end, they didn't even get a single strand of hair. Losing the wife and losing the soldiers. The collection of souls is almost done, and the other Hogyoku is almost complete. It won't be long before we start. Aizen sneered as he glanced at Dustless. Aizen Sosuke had an unforgettable hatred for Dustless. Ever since Dustless appeared, Aizen Sosuke felt like there was a giant wall in front of him, making him extremely difficult to deal with. Once there was a suitable opportunity, Aizen would never let Dustless go. When the new Hogyoku is completed, it's time for you to die. Aizen closed his eyes and began to think of a plan to use Kyoka Suigetsu to deal with Dustless through Central 46 to deal with Dustless. He knew that Urahara Kisuk's half Hogyoku was still in Dustless's hands, and it was impossible for him to hand it over. He could only order the entire Soul Society to deal with Dustless. Chapter 1067. After another hour, the captain's meeting finally came to an end. Every time they talked about something trivial, but old man Yamamoto was very happy about it. Every time they had a meeting, except for his sickly disciple, Joshua Yukitake, everyone else had to be present. No one was allowed to escape. Long time no see, Chunkoen. After the captain's meeting, all the captains left one after another. Uno Enaretsu came up to greet him with a smile, but soon after, her face wrinkled with dissatisfaction as she said unhappily, Chunkoen seems to have been avoiding me recently. Hearing this, Dustless bitterly smiled and decisively said, Retsu, that's just your imagination. Recently, I've been busy with work. You know that I rarely have time to rest. Almost every day, I have a lot of work to do. I haven't had the chance to relax recently. Dustless quickened his pace, wanting to escape. He was indeed purposely avoiding Uno Hanaretsu. This woman's nose was just too sensitive, and the word smart was not enough to describe her. Chun Kun. Uno Hanaretsu dragged out her words with a complicated expression. Looking at Uno Hanaretsu's sorrowful face, Dustless was speechless. He suddenly realized that he was a bit cruel. When he first came to Soul Society, it was always Uno Hanaretsu who helped him. Now, he was avoiding Uno Hanaretsu for no reason, just because she was too smart. It was indeed a bit unreasonable. Retsu, you're thinking too much. I suffered quite a bit of injuries when dealing with a great void in the modern world. I was just about to go to the 4th Division to ask for your help. Dustless changed his tone and said with a smile. Uno Hanaretsu nodded and led the way. Is that void very strange? It can actually injure you? Uno Hanaretsu asked in surprise. She knew Dustless's strength very well. Looking at the distant horizon, Dustless did not think much of it. Of course, he was just making things up to fool Uno Hanaretsu. Although void was very strong, it was impossible for it to injure him. He immediately replied, yes, he is very strong. He even knows the death god's ghost Tao. He is worlds apart from the great void realm that I know of. It took me a lot of effort to get rid of him. While I did not doubt Dustless's words at all. That day, the 12th Division had indeed detected a large amount of spiritual pressure in the modern world. Looking at Lai's face, Dustless suddenly felt sorry for her. He had only made up a story, but Lai had actually believed it without a doubt. Dustless was touched, but at the same time he felt guilty. Dustless turned to look at Lai's gentle face and said seriously, if I betray Soul Society one day, which side will you choose to side with? Lai was stunned upon hearing this. She stared at Dustless's face and felt troubled. This choice is truly vexing. After a while, sighed helplessly. She had been loyal to Soul Society for 1,000 years, so Lai could not easily abandon her beliefs. On the other hand, Dustless could barely be considered a close friend, so she could not easily give up her beliefs. There's no need to feel troubled, Lai. Seeing this, Dustless was somewhat disappointed. This was within his expectations. After all, he had only known Lai for a little more than a year. 1,000 years versus a short 1 year. It was clear which was more important. If you betray Soul Society, I will definitely side with you and destroy Soul Society. After a while, Dustless suddenly said. His eyes were filled with determination, and his clear eyes were as firm as a boulder. In Dustless's heart, Soul Society and Lai's feelings were not proportional. If he had to choose between the two, he would definitely side with Lai without hesitation. Lai's heart that had been sealed for 1,000 years loosened, and a warm current flowed through her heart. After 1,000 years, she, who had observed people to the smallest detail, could naturally tell that Dustless's words were from the bottom of his heart. His sincerity was without any pretense. No matter how young you are, you're still an adult. If the head captain hears this, he'll make a big fuss. I did not know whether to laugh or cry, but she was very touched. All right, Chinjun, the 4th Division has a lot of injured people from a few days ago. They're still waiting for me to take care of them. I'll take my leave first. Dustless nodded and said, do as you wish. As expected, she still can't let go of Soul Society. Looking at Lai's disappearing figure with a complicated expression, Dustless felt a sense of loss. At the same time, he laughed at himself. According to his previous temperament, he would not hesitate to ruthlessly destroy such an untactful woman. However, for some reason, he did not have such extreme emotions when facing Lai. He only wanted to respect her choice and did not have any other thoughts. The sky gradually darkened. At night, the sky was filled with stars. The moonlight was like a plate, and the starlight that filled the sky was extremely beautiful. Captain, I have something to do. I need to take leave. Matsumoto Runju had an I'm very busy expression as if something big had really happened. However, Dustless ignored her. Her so-called matter was actually going to drink. Forget it, go. Remember to come back quickly. Waving his hand, Dustless gestured for Matsumoto Runju to scram. Since he had nothing to do recently, let her do as she pleased. Dustless did not restrict the movements of these team members. Matsumoto Ranjaku suddenly smiled and disappeared in front of Dustless like a storm. This is unfinished work. Looking at the documents on the table in front of him, Dustless muttered to himself. Out of boredom, he picked up the documents and carefully read them. After a while, his expression became incomparably serious. Strange, this can't be an accident. There must be a problem. Dustless said sternly after reading a few times and confirming that his eyes were not blurred. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.